These are the DIYs you love the most in 2025. The top projects based off your likes, comments, and shares. Each has at least one Dollar Tree element, and chapters are by the season so you can easily jump to what inspires you. I'm Melissa, and this is Craft Crumbs. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to first pull out these four mirrors, and these are some of the things I'm going to use to embellish them. This is 91% alcohol mixed with water. I'm going to pull out this stash of beautiful winter transfers that I recently picked up from Amazon. I'm going to place them individually on each one of these mirrors. To start, I love this polar bear scene. So we're going to transfer that on there. It's really easy to transfer this onto glass. As you can see, it's pulling away beautifully. If you'd like an up-close look at these transfers, I'll link a video at the end that will show you my first reaction to the unpacking of these transfers, and I show you all of the beautiful detail in them. I wanted to create a foreground, so I'm going to cut another piece of transfer off and put it on the right side. I think this pine tree will be perfect for that area. So it's totally fine to stack a transfer on top of another transfer. Using a coffee stir stick, I'm going to apply a liberal amount of Mod Podge around just the edges of this mirror, just along that beveled edge. These mirrors turn out so pretty. Each and every one of them is done differently, you'll see. I'm going to take some of this brushed glass and sprinkle it over the top so it attaches to that glue we just laid down. You want to make sure that you contain this glass because although it's not sharp to touch and have in your hand, it would hurt if you stepped on it or if one of your pets stepped on it. Starting on the second mirror, I'm using this square shaped mirror this time. I'm going to use, look at that beautiful fox. I'm going to use this smaller transfer of the snowman. I think it's so cute. I'm going to put it down in the bottom right corner because there was a defect on the glass that I want to hide. I'm going to pull out some of these silver and blue flakes. I want to have a little more control over where the Mod Podge goes, so I'm going to apply it this time with a micro applicator brush. I'm tapping it down with my finger to make sure it's staying there. I'm going to go in and do the exact same thing in the top left corner. And then there at the bottom, I decided to feather that out a little bit more. So that's why you saw me add more Mod Podge at the bottom. Moving on to the hexagon, or this might actually be an octagon. In retrospect, I wish I would have found a different way to embellish this one because using the clay embellishments, this mirror just didn't turn out quite as nice as the others. I'm going to make a few of these little pine cones and acorns. I actually end up using just 2 acorns and not using the pine cone at all. I've attached these little acorns to the top with the squirrels that I had already varnished on. And now I'm just going to add in some pine cones because I didn't like that empty space that was between the bottom of the squirrels and the mirror. Moving on to the circle, as you can see, I've already varnished down a transfer with a nice little bird on here. And I'm taking my puffy paint. I picked this up at Michael's. I really don't use it a whole lot, but I'm just making this little zigzag to hopefully replicate what it would look like to have little tiny snowflakes, or I should say icicles. Once all of that is done, I set these pieces aside for about 30 minutes, and now it's time to seal. I'm going to use this triple thick to glaze the fronts of these mirrors as well as these tiny particles that we put on here. I'm just being very careful not to get any on the glass, but if you do, that's okay. Just go ahead and wipe it away. And here they are complete. Now that we're done playing with the Arctic beasts that everyone would probably be afraid of if they came face to face with, let's make something a little more friendly. Penguins are loved across the globe, so let's make one. Why not have a little bit of fun? I took this craft from the Dollar Tree and painted it with one coat of white acrylic paint just to give it a nice base. I cut down a piece of batting that would fit, and I'm going to use my Aleene's tacky glue to attach it. Don't worry about the glue that you can see through the batting. It does dry clear and it will not be noticeable within a few minutes. I'm going to glue around the top inner edge of the carafe and glue that batting to the inside. This is a large piece of soft felt that I picked up from Amazon. I'll link this down below for you as well. And I'm going to cut a small piece off of here. I guess it's not really all that small, maybe 8 by 12. And setting the rest aside, I'm not letting it go too far because I'm probably going to mess this up 3 times and need to start over, which I think I messed up this first time. And this is actually the second time that you're seeing here. The first time I did mess this up. So this is my second attempt. I'm measuring 3 inches from the top, and I'm going to separate these two lines that I'm cutting by about 4 inches. So they're 4 inches apart and 3 inches from the top. And I'm going to cut this centerpiece out. Now I chopped up a piece of scrapbook paper that I didn't like and I made a heart. I'm going to pin this to the top so that I can cut out a heart shape at the top. And this is going to give us kind of like the framework for the penguin's face. Folding it in half just to make it a little bit easier on myself. We have to try to work smart, not hard, right? Yes or yes? So I'm just going to cut that out with my fabric shears. And this is what we're left with. I'm going to spend 20 minutes straightening it out for you. But here you can see that I cut it apart. You can see the measurements more or less. Now off camera, I glued this down again with the Aleene's tacky glue. I actually didn't mean to do it off camera, so I'm sorry about that. I tied it with some jute rope from the Dollar Tree, just inexpensive jute rope, just to make sure everything stayed in place while it dried. The felt that we used around the body of the penguin was a very soft felt. This is a more stiff felt. I'll link this down below for you, but we need something a little more stiff for the wings. Here I'm just shaping it and I'm going to cut 2 of these. To attach these to the body, I'm going to make a slit that's the same width as the top of the wing and slide this piece of felt underneath it. And I'm changing from the Aleene's glue now to hot glue because frankly, I got tired of waiting on the Aleene's glue. Either will work. I'm going to do this the same way on both sides. I'm going to pin down with the glue just the top portion of the wing because this will allow the bottom portion to stick out and for you to be able to notice that there's actually a wing there. I wanted the tuxedo part of the body to extend more, so here I'm just making a modification. I cut out what looks like triangles so that it merges and blends well, and I'm going to attach that, and this is just going to bring that tuxedo out a little further into the center. And we're doing that as well on both sides. And I think that looks a lot better. So the back of this is looking a little rough. There's the shape that I cut out with more of that softer felt. And I'm going to glue this to cover up that back side. That looks like it's been through some kind of debacle. Here's where I entertain you with my inability to make a beanie. I only had a small amount of this fabric, but I so wanted it to be the beanie on this penguin. Here's where we are at this stage. I'm going to take my fabric shears and trim off the top just a little bit, just to open that up. Now this is a part I tucked in earlier. I'm going to cut that off so it doesn't add unnecessary bulk. I'm winging it here in case it's not obvious. I'm going to use a little bit more batting to beef that up a little. And I'm going to pull it all together with a piece of jute rope tied in a bow. I've never seen a hat that needed trim more than this one. So I'm going to use this black and white. It has beautiful contrast. I'm going to use that to trim our hat. I wasn't kidding when I said I had very little of this fabric. I pieced together 2 strips that were left over from my cuttings, and I'm going to make a scarf. A very short scarf. But, you know, it works out. I'm going to tack it down just in this one little spot to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Let's make a nose. No, let's make a beak. I didn't really know what else to make a beak out of, so I'm using a piece of pool noodle from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to cut it into the shape that I need it. Now, penguins are birds of prey, so it's going to have that pointed beak. Giving it a coat of black acrylic paint before I glue it on the face. Let's make some eyes. I took a piece of that softer felt and I'm going to cut a circle, and then I'm going to cut that circle in half to make our eyes. You guys are so patient. Why are you so patient? This project is taking forever. Thank you for sticking in there with me. I promise it'll be worth the wait. Our penguin still needs feet and a tail, so I'm going to use one of these hearts that I pulled out of my Valentine's Day stash, and I used it to just trace out 2 of these little hearts that I'm going to use as feet. Watch this easy installation of the feet. Put them on the table, add a dab of glue, and set the penguin on it. Easiest part of the entire DIY. It's time to make the tail. I have this bow from the Dollar Tree. We're going to use the top part that I just broke away to embellish the hat later. But for the bottom part, these little wings or whatever they are of the bow, I'm going to color them with my black marker. I'm going to cut them apart in the middle because they're too far apart to look anything like a penguin tail. And then I'm going to glue them on top of one another to get them a little closer. Off camera, I had added this Scrabble piece to the bottom to level it up, and that's where I'm going to glue the tail. I used this small wood round to create a circle with that softer felt, and I'm going to cover up the bottom just to clean it up a bit. No uglies coming out of this craft room. Okay, so I wanted to do the underside of the wings. I wanted to do that earlier in the video, but I couldn't find my white felt. This is some of the stiffer felt that came in the larger pack. And although I didn't have white in there, I probably used it previously. I did find this light gray, so I decided to go in after the fact and add the lighter color to the underside of the wings because that's how penguins do it in real life. I embellished the hat with the top part of that bow we used earlier, pine and one berry, and then I added a snowflake to it and the scarf. And this is what it looks like complete. How adorable! Do you guys agree? Was it worth the work? There's a glob of glue where the trim meets the hat there, and I did go in with a pair of cuticle cutters and trim that off. I love her. If it's a her, I really don't care. It's just like a cat or a dog that you might get. You really don't care about the gender. You just love the baby. This first one, I'm using one of these 12 by 12 wood blanks from the Dollar Tree. I actually use a second one, and I believe it's off camera, but I glue a second one to the back of this just to give it a little bit more girth later in the video. I'm first covering it with Mod Podge, and I'm going to put this piece of scrapbook paper on that came in a book of paper that I thrifted a few weeks ago. I let that Mod Podge dry for about 5 minutes and then used the iron-on technique to make sure I didn't have any wrinkles or bubbles. And now using one of these tic-tac-toe boards or kits that I picked up at Dollar Tree in the kids section, I'm just going to rob it of a couple of the XOs in here and give them a quick dry brushing with white acrylic paint. From that very same thrifted book, I pulled out this sheet of junk journaling, and I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife to cut a few of these pieces out. And now using my ruler, I'm just trying to determine where I want this first piece of paper to go. It has a little paper clip on it, which I thought was so cute, but I want to create a pocket. And I'm just going to glue on the sides and the bottom to create that pocket. Next, I'm going to position and glue on the XOXO. And because my wood boards in the paper are running vertically, I'm going to make sure that the dry brush marks in these letters are also running vertically. Next, I'm going to use a piece of this Dollar Tree rope to make a unique hanger with a dual purpose. I did tape off one end of it just so it wouldn't unravel while I worked, but I'm putting in 2 side-by-side knots, and then I'm going to glue one overlapping the other just slightly. It doesn't have to be an intricate looking knot, it just has to look like a knot, preferably a double knot like this, where it looks more like a chain link. I'm going to take this little bed of feathers that I put together off camera, and I'm just going to glue that to the center of this little heart that I picked up also at the Dollar Tree. I had this bronze skeleton key in my stash. This might be Tim Holtz that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, but I'm going to feed another piece of that rope from the Dollar Tree, just a smaller piece, through the ring in the rope and then through the ring in the heart. I'm going to feed one end of that piece of rope under the bottom loop and glue the 2 ends together, and this will become a 3rd loop in our rope. To hide where those 2 pieces join together, I'm just shifting it around to the back, and I'm going to add a little more glue just to make sure that it stays in place. I'm going to flip it back over so that the front is facing forward, and then I'm just going to lay everything out and make it look the way I need it to. I like to fool with things a lot. I probably don't need to fool with things half as much as I do. So when I glue those links to the top of the board, I want to make sure that some of that top loop is hanging out over the top edge. You just add a little bit of glue there to make sure it stays in place. But you'll see when I move my big hands here that it's sticking out over that top edge. See that? And we're going to come back to that. Now this bottom tail of the rope, I'm just going to let that lay the way it naturally wants to lay. Now I'm taking some of this braided jute that I picked up from Amazon. I'll have as much of this stuff linked down below for you as possible. I'm going to create a more decorative end to this, so I'm just going to wrap it around until I'm happy. I think it was something like 6 or 8 runs around the original rope. Now I'm just going to take my scissors as close to that as possible and cut that off. I just love how that rope just naturally has that curve in it, and I'm going to glue it down just the way it is. No sense in fighting with it, right? Just let it go. It looks beautiful. So I'm flipping this back over to the other side, and you can see now, by now I have already added that second piece of wood, and I stained the back of it with, I think it was Waverly wax. Actually, it's not Waverly wax. I think it's just brown paint. No, I think it's Waverly wax. The piece that I clipped off of there is going to go on the other side, and it has no purpose other than just stabilizing it for when you hang it on the wall. Then I'm going to go across the bottom and do the same. That rope is kind of chunky, so sometimes you have to do things like this. Moving on, I want to decorate the front a little bit more, so I have these cutouts of hearts from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to stain it with the Waverly wax. I have one of these smaller hearts that came from that pack of 3 that you just saw there, and I'm going to paint that red. Once that's dry, it gets glued together. I fed some jute rope through the top of this heart ornament and then fed it through the top loop there and glued it down. Here I'm just placing those tags that I cut out of that junk journaling sheet into this pocket. I had this heart that I cut out of burlap, that's going in as well, and one of these small wood hearts from the Dollar Tree. And then I'm placing one of these binder clips with another piece of paper there. This heart came from my stash. I'm going to glue it to the front of the pocket. As a final step, I'm going to add one of these nameplates with fake knots. Look, stop judging me for the number of nameplates I have. These typically show up in a lot of those variety packs that you can get at Goodwill with a bunch of the different crafting supplies in them. And for some reason, they're always stocked with nameplates. So I have quite a collection here, to which I'll probably never even use a 4th of them. I'm just going to glue that piece here to the top. And here's another piece of that junk journaling we cut out. It just says memories, and I'm going to pop that in here. And here it is complete. It is so cute. That rope, dual purpose, adds beauty and function to one piece. Let me know in the comments what you think about this Valentine's Day DIY. For this next one, I'm resorting to this 3-pack of wood cutouts in the shape of a heart from the Dollar Tree, and I'm pulling out the middle-sized heart. This heart wall decor piece also came from the Dollar Tree. It's lined with these beautiful half beads, and it looks like it was dry brushed and then sanded back, so it's really cute. There was a defect in the paint on the inside of that heart there, so I'm just touching that up. I'm going to make sure that that middle heart that we pulled from the pack fits. And have you guys seen this gift bag? There were 2 that I picked up that I thought were amazing. This looks like real leather, and it has a nice cushioning like quilt bounce to it, for lack of a better term. I'm going to cut out a small piece of that to fit the heart. Now, if you saw me do this DIY in the short that I put out earlier this week, you can skip ahead to the next chapter. But if you don't mind hanging out for a minute, you can continue to watch. It doesn't take very long to get through this one. I'm going to use the wood cutout as a template to make my shape. I'm going to cut that part out as well, and then Mod Podge the paper to the wood heart. To attach the 2, I'm using just a little bit of wood glue around that edge. Keep in mind that wood glue does not always dry clear, so be careful on how much you add here. After the dry time, I'm back to remove the clips. And I'm going to make the entire backside cohesive with one coat of white acrylic paint. Here it is complete. You can hang this on the wall or you can display it similar to how I have it here, whatever floats your boat. This thing is so cute, so elegant, and so easy. $3.75 to make it. For this next one, I'm going to use some of the paint colors that came in this pack of 30 pastel shades that my daughter picked up for me for Christmas. I mixed in a little bit of baking soda to thicken it up, and using my pouncer, I'm going to cover this entire Dollar Tree vase. This twice for a total of 2 coats. I let this dry, and now I'm coming back to sand down some of that rough texture. I want to make it look really textured, but feel like it's not. I'm going to go in with that same shade again, and this time instead of pouncing, I'm just going to do a straight brushing all over this vase. While that's drying, I'm going to get my clay ready. I'm using Dawes clay here, and I'm going to just use 2 of these bird molds. These are the swallow molds, and I'll try to link these down below for you. Notice I'm not using any cornstarch to prime the molds. It's really not needed, and it dries the clay out, which is the opposite of what we want to do. I'm going to release the clay from the mold by turning it upside down and then placing it on 1/2 of this plastic bag where I cut the bottom and the one side off. And this will allow me to paint it without making a mess on my table, and then I'll be able to flip it over after it's dry and easily apply the glue before putting it on the vase. You can also close the top part of this bag if you like. If you need to step away, it'll keep all of the clay nice and moist for you so that you can come back to it later. But there you just saw the flipping of the bag, and now I can see the back side of the clay. I'm going to apply my all-purpose wood glue, smooth it out, and then we'll put it on the vase. This one turns out so beautiful, and it's something that you could leave out a majority of the year. When you're putting the clay down, make sure that you're pushing those sides of the clay, like the edges of the clay, make sure you're pushing that down onto the surface. Before I placed these birds on the vase, I painted them in a very pale pink, but decided to go with the same color that everything else was painted in, and then we'll come back to this pink to dry brush later. I took about 8 of the bows to cover the top edge of the vase. 2 additional but smaller bows to place at the base of the bird's tail. And no surprise here, we're going in with the exact same color to cover all of this up. I'm going to dry brush that pale pink shade all over the vase to bring out the details. I'm not applying any pressure here with the brush, I'm just lightly grazing over the surface. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this one. For this first one, I am prepping 3 of these Dollar Tree oval wood cutouts. I'm going to use 2 of them on one DIY and 1 on another. To get all 3 of them ready, I filled those holes in where the hanger was removed and painted each one of them with white acrylic paint. Even though we're doing 2 different DIYs with these 3 wood blanks, the first few steps are going to be the same for all 3 of them. I'm using my mixed media gel pens to create sort of a scene here. The top will be blue for the sky, and then I'll go in with some green for the bottom, and that will be the grass. These gel pens are very lush. They are creamy and very easy to blend. So I'm just scribbling it onto the surface and using my pouncer. You could use your finger, a sponge, or even a cloth to blend these out. You can use this on almost any surface. Unlike traditional paint, you can control how light or dark you want it to be. And the dry time is minimal, just a minute or so. It does leave somewhat of a gloss finish. Because I'm putting a transfer on these, I'm going to give it just a light sanding before I do. I picked up these Easter Bunny transfers from Temu in a pack of 6. I'll link them down below for you. And I'll try to find something similar to link for you from Amazon for those of you who don't shop at Temu. I'm using my mini quilting iron to press these onto the wood. It takes a little bit of patience, and then after you have ironed it down, you want to set it aside for about 15 seconds to cool before you pull it off. So here's one that's been cooling, and I'm just going to pull off that protective layer. I'm feeling so excited and anxious while I do this voiceover because I know that you're going to love every DIY in this video. I'm going to use my 120 grit sandpaper to take off the overlapping pieces from the edges. I'm going to use this gold metallic ink pad and my blender brush to age the edges on the ones that have the brown bunnies. It's time to split these babies up, but don't worry, they won't be apart for very long. We're going to set those two aside and get to work on this cutie. This is something that I prepared in advance. I typically have a little stash of things, little collages that I've put together that are easy for me to just pick out, no decisions at the moment, and put on a project. So this is a piece of book page with a little crocheted flower. I actually dyed that with food coloring, and then it has a little ribbon on it. And as you saw, I just popped the tiniest white pearl in place in the center. And now we're going to work on the background for this little guy. I picked up this three-dimensional piece at Michael's about a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago. And I bought all of the ones that they had in stock at the time because it's so interesting. It cost about $5 and you can get so many little pieces from it, which equates to more projects. I'm using the middle arch and giving it a coat of green paint. As an alternative, Dollar Tree has these Easter signs with the arch at the top. You could just cut that off about 2/3 of the way down. And for visuals, here it is with the scrapbook paper behind it, just so you can get an idea of what it would look like. We're moving back to the arch that I painted here, and I did give it a dry brushing of white acrylic paint. Now I'm going to take a cover that came off of an old paper pad, and I'm going to trace out that shape so that I can create a back for this. To cover up that backing, I'm going to be using torn up book pages. I'll tell you in just a minute where I got these book pages, but for now I want to show you these textured edge rulers. Most of you have probably seen these before, but if you have dexterity issues and you have problems moving your hands, consider using one of these rulers. I inked the edges around each of my pieces so that you can see the different pieces once they're glued down. I'm going to cover up this backing with the book pages, starting with a large piece in the middle, and then I'm just going to glue around, working every single piece in to make it look like it was masterfully put there. For those of you who are wondering if I purposely destroyed a book for this project, the answer is no. My local library has a big bin sitting in their lobby full of books that are set to go into the trash, and they allow people from the community to come in and take these books before they're sent to the landfill. So that's where I got these. If you do not like the idea of doing something like this with real book pages, I'm going to link something down in the description. These are pages I've used before, but they're basically pre-printed on regular paper and will give you the same effect. Once I had all the pieces down, I gave it one thin coat of Mod Podge to seal everything in. And then I'm going to use a sandwich bag to smooth it out and make sure that I don't have any wrinkles. I used wood glue to attach the backing to the frame. And after that dried, I came back thinking, maybe this isn't sturdy enough to apply a wood piece to. So I'm going to use another piece of scrapbook paper cut down to size, and I'm going to glue that in place. And that will give me a little bit more of a firm backing to hang our bunny plaque on. You might remember that before we took this apart, there were beads stringing everything together, and it left a hole there at the top. I'm going to use it to attach a hanger. With this piece of twine, I made a loop and knotted it off, and I'm going to use this threader tool. This thing I would be lost without. I'm going to use that to pull it through and then just put a bead of hot glue to hold it in place. It's time to bring our baby bunny back in. I'm going to put a piece of felt behind here so that you can get a full appreciation for that embellishment that I put on. There's a little bit of tulle that's sticking out there. I wasn't sure if you could see, so hopefully you can see it this way. I'm going to use wood glue, smear it all over the back side of this thing. It seems to be taking me forever, but I'm going to use that for a more substantial and long-term hold and just place that down, eyeballing it in the middle. And I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure to make sure it bonds. And once that's dry, it's ready to hang. Look how sweet this is. Oh my gosh, is that bunny kissing the egg? What do you think that bunny's doing? Oh, so precious. Let me know in the comments what you think about our first Easter DIY. It's time to move on to the second part of this. Here I marked in the center where I thought the middle was, and I am just not trusting myself. I find these oval shapes a little more difficult to find the center on. So I traced out a piece of cardstock, fold it in half, and that's going to help me find the center. And I'm just going to use my poking tool to mark where it is, and we'll see how far off I was. I love to test myself on stuff like this. There you go. You can see I was just a smidge off. That's where I marked, and that second hole I pointed to is where the actual center is. So I'm glad I did that. Not much of a difference, but it might have made a little bit of a difference when hanging it up. If it's not in the center, it's going to hang crooked. So there I was just stacking the two together because you can see that the template doesn't fit the second piece as well. And that's because the two pieces aren't the same size, despite the way they look. They're a little deceiving. So I'm going to take a drill bit, just a small drill bit. I think this is 5/8 of an inch drill bit, and I'm going to put a hole in there. Not a very big hole at all. Our bunny decided to take a trip on the merry-go-round, but it wasn't enough to wake her up. What's going on? These babies know how to get it in. Do you ever see somebody sleeping so soundly and wish that you could sleep like that? I know I do. I'm going to use my crocodile to add an eyelet to the hole that we just drilled in, and that's just going to make the hole look very finished. If this is something you'd like to put on a wreath, add a second eyelet to the bottom so that you have a place to wire it on. This would be beautiful on a wreath. I braved the cold and I went outside with my snips and cut a few twigs off of my honeysuckle bush. I am going to glue them to the front of these plaques. I'm using my detail glue gun to make sure I get just the right amount of glue and I don't have a lot of seepage out from underneath those twigs. If you want to click that subscribe button, I will not fight you on it. I'm going to continue to play around and add the twigs so that they frame the outer edge of the bunny. If you think they're on opposite sides now, you're not imagining things. I cleaned off my workspace and then laid them back down, so now they're just on opposite sides. But I'm going to grab some glue sticks before I move on because I was running low on my desk. And I'm just going to use some of these little silk flowers that I had in my stash and start popping them all over the branches. They are the most delicate, sweet little flowers. I'm trying to stick to just a couple of different colors. So I have like a light cream, a peach color, and then a pink. And I'm just putting them on the branches where it makes sense. And at the top here, it was just a little too thick to fit inside the flower, so I trimmed it to make it a little thinner. In some areas, looking at the bottom of the flower was not appealing, so I just popped another flower there to cover it up. And here's where we are so far. I'm going to take a piece of this cloth lace. I have this also linked down below for you. You must get some of this stuff if you love mixed media and texture in your DIYs. Very affordable. I'm going to try to put another small collage together using a button. I'm not going to sew the button down. This is embroidery floss, and I'm simply feeding it through the holes in the button to make it look like it's sewn on. I'm going to add a small bead of hot glue to make sure that those threads don't unravel. And here in that same pack of lace that I have linked for you is one of these sheets. And I'm going to stack these on top of each other with the button on top. Here's my purple felt that I'm bringing out again so that you can really see what I'm doing. I am kind of staggering it. So one of the pieces I put up and then I twisted the other one around in the opposite direction so you could see the difference. And now we're just gluing it on with the button to the top of the plaque. See how I did that in kind of like an X formation with the two pieces of lace and button on top? There we go. I had an extra piece there we'll save for later. You could totally stop here, but I'm going to add a tiny little bumblebee to the flower that's across from their face on each one of these plaques. Here I'm just showing you what this would look like if you were to mount it on something with a contrasting pattern or color. I added fairly long jute rope hangers to these. One is, I believe, at 12 inches, one is at 16 inches, and then that way I can just stagger them on the wall. But look how sweet these turned out. Another very, very cute outcome. Here are all three of these projects together. Go down into the comments and let me know what you think about our second Easter DIY. This next project is sort of a two-in-one because we're going to first decorate this wood bunny from the Dollar Tree, and then we're going to hand make an umbrella for her to carry. This first step is very easy. I pulled out my stash of dried pressed flowers and found these hydrangea blossoms that I had pulled off last fall and dried. Now, I'd placed these in a book, closed it, and forgot about it for a few weeks. And then when I came back to them, they were ready to go. And I just kind of stashed them away with everything else. They're going to be perfect for the bottom of this bunny. These have a beautiful green and purple hue to them. You'll see how we're going to have the color progress up the bunny in just a minute. I'm using an acetone-based Aleene's tacky glue for this because it doesn't warp what you're gluing and it dries very quickly. For this next step, I'm going to use preserved hydrangea that I picked up from Amazon. I'm going to start by applying this lighter shade of yellow, which is more of a cream color, and then I'm going to go up to the next layer and do the darker shade of yellow, and then finally pink. And the idea is to make it look like this bunny is coming into the season. You might notice that I switched to hot glue for the preserved hydrangea. It's not dried, so there's no chance of it warping. I found this sweet little flower in the stash here. I don't know what it is exactly. It came out of my yard, but that doesn't mean I know what it is, right? But I'm going to use that as the eyeball, and then I'm going to give this entire piece a haircut all the way around just to define those edges. The next day, I came back and I added more dried hydrangea, but hydrangea that I hadn't dried flat. I just dried the picks. And this gave me the same amount of lush at the bottom that I had at the top. I gave it a quick spurt of hairspray to keep everything intact, and it took about 15 minutes for that to dry. Now I'm going to use some strips of this faux leather from the Dollar Tree to wrap the outer edge of the bunny. But I first have to join the different strips together so that I have one piece to go around. See how the outer edge looks wet? That's because I tried using the tacky glue to adhere this piece of faux leather and it didn't work out. So I pulled that back and now I'm just going to reattach it this time with hot glue, and that worked out perfectly fine. I want all sides of the bunny to look pretty, so I'm going to Mod Podge on a piece of this pretty plaid paper that I picked up in a pack from Walmart. When I set it back down on itself, it'll hold it in place while it dries. Moving on to the umbrella, this is a fun part. I cut out two pieces of paper. One, again, is that plaid paper because we're going to make this kind of like a versabrella that you see in the boutiques where the underside is pretty as well. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these circles that I cut out. I believe they measure 3.5 inches wide in diameter, and I'm going to fold them in 12 equal parts. It starts to get a little thick when folding, so I'm going to use this paper tool to smooth out those edges and make sure I have a nice crease. You can also use something like this that comes with your rub-on transfers or even your Cricut tool. I'm curious to know how you feel about paper crafts. Personally, I love paper crafts. I don't do a whole lot of journaling and things like that. I'd rather incorporate the paper into DIY decor that we make and can use around our home. And it can be a challenge to figure out how to do that. So if you're game for it, I can continue to show you how to incorporate paper into everyday home decor, seasonal decor, and such. And honestly, I'll probably incorporate it in whether you say you're game or not because I just love it so much. And I always tell you to craft what you love, right? No matter what we're using on the channel, you can always substitute with your own supplies and textiles. I had to trim up the edges of one of these circles, and after doing that, I'm going to glue these two pieces together. I'm going to start to shape this into an umbrella by pointing all of my folds upwards. As they say in paper crafting, make them all mountains. To give it a dome shape like an umbrella has, I'm going to cut out one of these panels and glue one over the other. And there we have that umbrella shape. I'm going to trim the edges to give it the appearance of an umbrella on each one of those individual panels. If you want to add a little extra detail, you could glue a thin piece of lace or crocheted lace around the outer edge of your umbrella. I'm way too tired for that, so we're just going to move on. I have a skewer that I picked up in a pack of however many at the Dollar Tree. Now, I was looking for that panel that I cut out earlier to do this with, but I couldn't find it. It has escaped me. So I just cut a small piece of that checkered paper out, and I'm going to glue that around the top. This is going to be the top of the umbrella. Take a pointy or sharp tool and poke a hole here and feed that skewer down through. I'm going to put a little bead of hot glue around there to keep it in place. And then I do that on the underside as well. Starting to look like an umbrella. I'm going to cut off that sharp end because if anybody's going to stick themselves with it, it'll be me. We're going to glue it onto the back of our bunny. Here she is complete. So precious, so sweet. And with that hairspray on there, nothing is going to fall off. These are some of the items I'll be using to create our first Easter craft. I have more paper here than I'm going to need. You'll typically need one sheet of paper if it's double-sided or two sheets if it's not. Naturally, mine is not. So I'm going to add some double-sided tape to the back side of one sheet and stick it to the backside of the other. I cut that sheet of paper in half, and now I'm going to use some clear gel tacky glue and some double-sided tape to attach a 13-inch zipper. This project derived from my need to get rid of some of the zippers I have in my stash. I'm not sure if I ever told you this before, but I'm somewhat of a minimalist when it comes to crafting. I don't have a ton of supplies. I have just the right amount of supplies to be creative. Yet when I look at my zipper stash, there are probably 15 or 20 in there that I need to either use or get rid of. I laid the zipper on the table face up, and then after deciding which side of the paper I wanted to face outward, I'm going to lay that down onto the zipper. So I took a little bit of that double-sided tape, and then I topped it with the tacky glue. This is going to give it a long-term hold. Once that's done, I'm going to flip the entire piece over, trace out the chalkboard shape. I love crafting with these Dollar Tree chalkboards because they're thick and they're versatile. I'm just checking the fit, and then we're going to set that piece aside. Now, earlier when I told you you only needed one or two pieces of scrapbook paper, depending on whether yours was double-sided, this is a third piece. So just to correct myself, if you have a double-sided sheet of paper, you would need that as well as an additional sheet. Choosing the background is where you can really get creative. This little bunny doesn't have a lot of color in it, so I wanted to choose a background that had green and neutrals. So this sheet is perfect. I cut it down to fit the chalkboard and now I'm just going to iron it on. This transfer is adorable, very affordable, and I have it linked down below in the description box for you. While I wait for that transfer to cool down, I'm moving back to the chalkboard, applying an even coat of Mod Podge. Setting that aside to dry, I'm coming back to remove that protective film from our bunny. I'm taking my time to ensure that I don't pull up any parts of the transfer. Normally, I wouldn't like seeing the background coming through the image, but I really kind of like it on this one. I'm going to give this chalkboard a shot of the heat gun to move it along, and now I can place the image down. I kept that protective film that I removed a few minutes ago, and I'm going to use it as a barrier for ironing this entire piece down to the chalkboard. With all of the major elements complete, I want to start putting this together. I'm placing the first piece that we made with the zipper down on top of the chalkboard, and I'm just kind of gauging the fit. I'll maneuver this around until I like the way it looks. I kind of have an idea of where everything's going to go, but I want to measure so that the two sides that are folding down are cohesive. Now that I know exactly where the folds should be, I'm going to use my bone tool to make those lines nice and crisp. I'm applying double-sided tape and that tacky glue again to hold this zipper portion down. You can use hot glue to tack this down. I tend to use double-sided tape and tacky glue because it doesn't warp or change the paper. It doesn't make it bumpy like you might see with hot glue under it. Here I'm just checking the measurements once again, and I'm going to tack the paper down with hot glue. If you want this to be a functional pocket, skip this step. In a few minutes, I'm going to make a mistake where I have to pull that back up. And when I glue it back down, it's not bulging as much. I'm going to add these yellow buttons on the corners of the collar. And I pulled out of my stash this ball pin that has a couple of beads. These are yellow and green beads from the Dollar Tree. I typically have these kind of things made up already so that I can just pull them out when I need them. And I'm going to use these stamps that I had in my stash. I'm not quite sure where I got these. I might have gotten them from Temu. But here's where you start to see that I make a mistake and try to recover from it. The ink gets in places where I don't want it. That's probably because I'm not using a block to apply it. I'm going to try to cover up those unwanted ink blotches with other stamps. But you can see right above that left side flower that I just put down the smudges of ink. I'm going to cover that up with lace that I'm applying underneath that collar. This is where I had to pull the collar up on the corners to get the lace underneath. And then I'll just tack it back down with hot glue. Let me know in the comments what your last crafting mistake was. It'll make me feel better about myself. I just want to read them. And let me know if you had to trash the project, if you were able to recover from it. Let me know what the turnout was. I'm going to keep the hanger very simple by adding a piece of crocheted ribbon. This was the most challenging and time-consuming of the 5 projects we're doing today, but look how sweet she turned out. Close your eyes. I don't want you to see how mortifying that ruffle looks. I'd ask you what you would have done to fix the ink issue, but you probably wouldn't have made such a mess of it to begin with. I'm going to use one of these elongated leaves that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I've only seen one in the store and this was it. So hopefully you can get your hands on this or something similar. I also have this pack of rub-on transfers from my favorite brand on Amazon, and I'm going to start to apply them to this leaf in a way that makes sort of a scene. The one thing that all of the DIYs in this video have in common is that they're all just super fun. This is one that was more vintage than the others, so I wanted to create a scene that tells a story. This pack of transfers is absolutely gorgeous. The transfer tools that come with it, though, are plastic and they're really not effective. So I am using a combination of my fingers and this wooden tool that I received in another pack, actually from the same brand, but just a different pack. And I love this wooden tool, but because of the ridges in this leaf, I'm having to use my fingers more than anything because I want to make sure that those transfers are kind of like hugging up against each one of those raised areas. If you're enjoying this video, do me a solid, press the like button. It really goes a long way. Do you ever overlap your transfers? When I laid down this second transfer, which is a bunny holding a basket, he's so cute, his ears are going to go up and overlap the one at the top. I think this can make all the difference in whether this looks like a scene opposed to images slapped on a surface. Go any further with the transfers, I want to go around the edges with this gold gilding polish. I'll have this link down below for you as well. I wasn't sure if any of the transfers would overlap that outer edge, so I thought I would just do this step next, and then I'll finish with the bunnies. This gilding polish is one of my favorite things to craft with. It's like rub and buff with superpowers. I'm going to add character to this piece with more of the gilding polish in just a few minutes, but I need to get these transfers down first. Here I had lost an antenna to the butterfly, so I'm just going to pencil it in. I wanted this to look like a brother and sister who had gathered eggs and vegetables from their backyard and are now earning their keep by selling them at the markets. Do kids still do that? Earn their keep, I mean. I'm going to go back in with more of this gilding polish and hit those high areas. I'm adding more gilding polish to the low-lying areas just by dabbing it on, and then I go in with a baby wipe to blend it out. You'll want to protect this with your favorite sealer. I used Waverly Clear Varnish. Apply just a nice even thin coat over the entire piece. It's matte so it doesn't add any shine. Here it is complete. I'm starting with this first one where I'm using 2 of these pieces of plexiglass from the Dollar Tree. For now, I'm keeping the film on the back side of the plexiglass and taping off the edges so I can color them in with my metallic gold paint marker. The idea of keeping the film on the back is simply because I don't trust myself not to totally flub this up. I'm sorry that you can see my ceiling light there in the reflection. I don't know why I didn't turn it off. It's not like I need it. Just a memory fart, I guess. I'm peeling this tape back right away just in case I have anything I need to clean up, but it gave me a pretty clean line. I'm going to reuse that tape on the second piece, and while that first one's drying, we're going to go ahead and move forward, and then you'll see we come back to it in just a minute. Going back to that first piece, I'm going to once again reuse the tape at the top and bottom, and then we'll repeat it on the second piece. This will give us a nice metallic gold edge all the way around the rectangles. This one turns out so sweet and it sets the tone for the rest of the video, so stick with me. Now that those edges are complete and nice and dry, I want to add something to the front of these. I had these 2 vellum pieces from a Tim Holtz collection that I picked up at Hobby Lobby a while back. These flowers are so beautiful. I don't know what kind of flowers they are. If you can see here and know what they are, let me know. Let us all know. And I'm just going to take a little bit of my white Elmer's glue and a sponge and just tap, tap, tap that right onto the back there and give it a nice even coat to apply this to the plexiglass. Here I'm just putting the two pieces side by side to make sure that I have the flowers attached at the same height on each. Just going to go ahead and clean up any little remnants of glue that I can see peeking out. There really isn't much because of the way that it was done. And then I wipe off some of the fingerprints that I left on the vellum. And this is what they look like so far. I'm going to go ahead and take that plexiglass cover off the back. How many monkeys does it take to pull the backing off of this thing? I'm going to touch up the areas that need it with my metallic paint pen and let that dry. Okay, everything's dry. I'm going to close these two pieces so that they sandwich together. And I'm going to tape them together so that they don't move and shift on me, just using a small piece of painter's tape to keep everything in place. You'll see why. And now using a small drill bit, I'm going to drill a hole at the top and bottom about a ½ inch from each end. That dirt that I'm cleaning up, that was already on the drill bit. It didn't come out of the plexiglass, I promise. We're going to peel that back, and I'm just going to take a look at the holes to make sure that everything looks nice and neat. That's what it looks like, if you could actually see that. So this is some gold twine that I had left over from Christmas, and I'm going to try to feed that through those holes. I realized right away that that hole is not large enough, and that's just fine by me. I just pulled the two pieces that twist together apart to get a little thinner to be able to go through. Feeding each end in through the back of the plexiglass and through the front. Just like that. I swear my hands have not been working these days. It's just too cold in Pennsylvania. Now I'm just going to tie this into a nice, neat little bow. And this is what it looks like. It's very functional. If you want to store it away, you can fold it backwards and it doesn't take up any space at all. You can give this as a hand-delivered gift by placing it inside an envelope. This is what it looks like complete. Here it is next to the vase we created in the last video. I love how elegant this piece looks, and it can't hurt that it was also affordable, fast, and easy to make. I'm putting the measurements on the screen for this next project, but I'm going to tell you what they are as we go as well. This is a complete from scratch build, and you've seen me do this on the channel before. If you haven't, you might not be subscribed, and if you want to see more, click the subscribe button. I cut 9 5-gallon paint sticks down, each at 10 inches. I cut a birch log from Hobby Lobby down into 3 pieces, 2 each at 13 inches and 1 at 8¼ inches. I'm going to butt 2 of those birch logs up against one of the paint sticks and attach them with my nail gun. This is a nail and staple gun, so you could really use the nails or staples in it. I wanted to use the nails for this project just to make it look a little bit more professional. You see me using my hammer to tap those brads in, and that's just because the birch wood is a little bit harder than what that portable nail gun can handle, or what my wrist can handle, I should say that, because it might come down to my own personal strength or lack thereof. But it's never a problem just to tap those little brads in. So you can see that I have attached those slats with just a smidge of space, probably not even a quarter inch between them, and you can just watch this piece come together. Now for this top handle, this is where I'm attaching the 8¼ inch birch wood piece. And I'm not using any nails for this. I'm just gonna do glue. I originally thought that I might put screws in it after the glue dried, but it's holding up just fine without the screws. So I figured why have the extra eyesore of a screw head there. The wood glue did the job just fine. Oh gosh, look who's back inspecting the work. No respect. I'm going to dry brush some antiquing wax over the top of these wood embellishments. To attach it, I'm going to first find the center and then use my wood glue, super glue from the Dollar Tree to adhere it. I'm going to pull out some of my canvas fabric and cut down 2 small pieces to go on the inside of the basket. Everything that you see me do on one side of the basket, I'm going to repeat on the opposite side. I'm going to use more wood glue and just dab it on the fabric so that I can slide it down in, and then use my ruler to make sure that everything is nice and smooth and up against the slats. This is a piece of trim that I cut off the canvas fabric, and I'm cutting it down to fit so that it will cover up those rough edges and give it a nice finish. I used my Dollar Tree clamps to hold them in place while they dry, and then probably about 15 minutes later I come back. Let's dry brush it with a little bit of white acrylic paint. Let's add a little more antiquing wax to that wood embellishment. I'm going to add some washi tape, but before I do, I'm going to take a sponge and just go over the surface of the wood with a little bit of Mod Podge, lay the washi tape down, and then go over the washi tape as well with Mod Podge. I filled 2 of these little Dollar Tree jars with the cork lids up with some dried flowers from my stash, wrapped some twine around it, and I'm using it to hang on the handle of this piece. It's very bright, I know. I don't want any of you to be shy. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one. Hopefully you don't need sunglasses to look at it. Dollar Tree. I'm going to give them 1 coat of white primer paint and then make them pretty with acrylic paint. I'm going to set that aside to dry and start to work on the second element. I'm using this blue sheet of construction paper just so that you can see what I'm doing. I cut off a small piece of tulle. I bought this roll of tulle, I believe at Hobby Lobby, but we're going to use this a couple of times in the video. Along with the tulle, I'm going to use pieces from 2 different packs of transfers that I picked up from Amazon, which I'll link down below for you. I love the way the wildflowers in the watering can look, and I'm going to grab that little butterfly as well. I'm going to transfer this onto the tulle. Transferring onto this material is no more difficult than it would be to transfer it onto any other material, whether it be wood, metal, or fabric. You just have to be patient and work with it a little bit. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that these pieces of tulle are now sticky on the back side because we put a transfer on it, but it's not. I would never set you up like that, okay? We don't half-ass things around here. In fact, if you ever try to recreate something that you see me do on the channel and it's just not working out, please email me or comment so that we can kind of navigate and find out where it went wrong. Here I'm just taking my fabric shears and trimming it down. You won't really see the tool all that much. You'd have to get very, very close to it to see it when it's done. But just to prepare for those people who do get very close to it, go ahead and cut the edges of your tool as straight as you possibly can. I'm going to use this clear jot glue that I picked up from the Dollar Tree to adhere it to the wood. This is a great way to apply anything that's transparent or somewhat transparent to a surface because the glue dries clear and the pouncing really takes away any opportunity for it to clump up. People look at it and wonder how it's stuck there. I'm going to pounce some of that glue over the top of the tool as well, just to ensure a perfect adhesion. Let's add some feet. I'm turning 50 years old this week, you guys. 50. Holy crap. No matter how old I get, I love gifts. I always have. If you're not subscribed, it would be the best gift. I so appreciate your subscription and the time you spend with me. I want to make this second one taller, so I'm going to add a second row of these wood blocks. Now, this one is done, but I want to show you how you can potentially add a tea light to the back of these. I took a little round disc that I had in my stash. I think I picked them up from Hobby Lobby. If you add another one of those little blocks and glue it to the back, it's the perfect spot for a tea light. Here they are complete. They are the most precious little delicate, I don't know what. But I would love to see these in a windowsill, hanging out in between the plants and letting the sun sneak through. I often see these small items at the Dollar Tree and wonder what anyone would do with these. And after making them pretty, I still don't know what anybody would do with these. Let me know in the comments what you think about our first spring craft. Now that we have our feet wet, we're going to kick it up a notch and apply the same method to an 8-inch bamboo ring. Using a second set of transfers, I'm going to lay down the images to create a scene. I love how you can take different pieces from different sheets and make something that tells a story. I'm not going to bore you with the time it takes for placement. I'm just going to skip ahead a bit and maybe speed it up a little bit so we can get to the part where we're attaching it to the bamboo hoop. I made sure that the image fit perfectly inside the hoop, and now I'm going to take my hot glue gun, flip that image upside down, and place it face down onto the hoop. As I'm gluing, I'm pulling the tool as taut as I possibly can to make sure that everything lines up perfectly and doesn't fall loose. Now, this is an 8-inch ring and the tool is 6 inches. So you're going to have a little bit of space at the top and bottom. So that's why it's even more important to make sure you're pulling it taut when gluing. Be safe here and either use your finger protectors or the glue gun on a low heat setting. The glue is definitely going to get on your fingers. I'm going to simultaneously lock in the edges of the tool and create a hanger using braided jute rope that I picked up from Amazon. This stuff is awesome too. I'm very particular about how I add hangers to all of my projects and use this braided jute rope on many of them. Most of the spring crafts in this video are going to be great options to give as a gift for Mother's Day. Of course, you can keep it yourself as well, which is what I intend to do. Let's repeat the process on the front side of the hoop. Here it is complete and hanging on the wall in my mudroom. This is a purple wall behind it so you can see exactly what it looks like. And here it is hanging on the door that leads to my backyard. This is a little pail that I thrifted from Goodwill in a set of four. And I'm going to start coating the outside with Mod Podge. And look at that. I'll go ahead and recover from that hot mess. Now I'm taking a McDonald's napkin. I'm going to crinkle it up and I'm going to cover this pail with just this one single napkin. So I'm just going to Mod Podge it on like you would anything else. I'm using a generous amount of Mod Podge to keep everything in place, and it also adds to the effect. Do you see that bruise on my left hand? It used to be a lot darker than that. I could barely move my hand, and that thing just looked horrific. What happened, you ask? Well, I am a klutz. That's what happened. I am prone to accidents. I'm very clumsy. I was removing a window AC to prepare the window for a new AC and smashed my hand right between the AC and the window. I'll never again try to remove a 12K BTU air conditioner on my own. But actually, I probably will. I'll do it again. I never learn with these things. I think I'm invincible and I can do anything. Don't even get me started. I could tell you a story about how I changed out the microwave above my stove and almost set the entire kitchen on fire. But we won't go there unless you ask. If you ask for the story, I'll give it to you. But what I'm doing with the bucket here, after everything has dried with the Mod Podge, I'm going in with a coat of that same black acrylic paint and I'm going to cover this to its entirety without leaving any of the napkin peeking through. I'm wiping it back a little as I go so I don't have accumulation in the nooks and crannies that's going to clump up and easily peel away later. The entire bucket and handles painted and dry, I'm going to use this bronze paint again and just lightly brush over the surface to bring out the details of that napkin. I'm using a wool brush. I think that this is awesome for dry brushing and it just floats over the surface almost. I'm using just a small amount of paint on my brush as I go and not applying any pressure at all, just grazing it over the surface. This kind of mixed media is so easy and so much fun to create. Woohoo! She is painted and she is fancy. I'm going to pull out some of the die cuts that I made off camera. It was kind of crazy because when I found a paper pack in my stash that I really loved but didn't know how to use, I just went crazy creating die cuts. And I thought that these off-white or cream colored ones with the garden scenes were perfect for this project. The paper by itself glued onto the bucket is not going to look right. So I took a scrap piece of crocheted lace and I'm going to pleat it around the sides and then glue the whole piece onto the bucket. I'm going to put some faux wildflowers from the Dollar Tree in the pail, but first I want to make something else to go into it. I want to make it look like wildflowers growing inside of a pot, inside of another pot. It'll make sense in just a minute, but I'm going to take some of these little pots from the Dollar Tree. One of them had a broken piece. I'm just going to embrace it. I'll glue these three pots together, stuff some moss in between them, and then I'm going to add a bee die cut to embellish it. I added a few of the wildflowers to the top pot, cleaned it up a bit, and now it's ready to go inside the larger pot. I cut all of the wildflowers down to the same height. I'm not using any kind of foam because I want this to look very free and flowy. So I'm just bunching them up and I'm going to stick them in there. And then I'm going to pop in those three little pots that I just put together. And here it is complete. What do you guys think about this one? I want to use this technique over and over and over again. It's very addicting and look at the outcome. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one. I haven't forgotten about these cute little foil birds that I cut using the die cutting machine. I'm simply going to glue these onto a box that I thrifted from Goodwill recently, and then I'll add some washi tape around the sides. None of this is rocket science. I'm just giving you ideas for how you can use your die cutting machine to create everyday home decor. Even if you're not a card maker, even if you're not a journal maker, these die cutting machines can be used for all types of crafting and decor. Washi tape will never stay on this box without some extra adhesion, so I'm going to lift it up and apply just a small amount of Aleene's tacky glue to the box and then lay it back down. I used more of the bronze colored acrylic paint to stress the edges around the box and update the color of the stone. Here it is complete. Tell me this thing isn't absolutely adorable. I want to make so many of these die cuts with that foil pan. I can't wait to read what you think about this one. For this one, I'm going to use a piece of scrapbook paper that has an image of a woman in a long period style dress in the color purple. She's walking in a field of lavender. I'm first going to ink the edges to give it a little bit of character. I want to remove a portion of the image. So to do that, I'm going to take two rectangular shaped cutting dies, one smaller than the other, and place them down one inside the other. Look at that beautiful cut. Now this piece that I'm removing, I'll put it in my scrap stash for another project. Might be nice to use as a frame for something. I'm going to finish inking the edges of the paper, and then I'm going to use Aleene's Craft Bond glue to adhere it to the wood. I initially thought that I would keep the wood a natural look, but I decided with the purple it would make it pop a little bit more just to dry brush a little bit of white paint over those natural edges. For the next step, I'm using one of these clear key tags. Now, I took some of this paper that was left from the other side and used my 1-inch hole punch to cut out a portion of the lavender. The key tag will make a nice frame for this, and I have an embellishment. I want my embellishment to have a gold frame. There was just like not even a millimeter of light sneaking through that, so I used the paint marker to color in around the edges of the back. I'm going to use a variety of crocheted flowers and other little tidbits from my stash to embellish this. What are you thinking about this one so far? I know you've told me you love whenever we use mixed media in the projects. I mean, what a way to like bring it up a notch. Every element is thought out to some degree. Maybe it's just a happy accident. That works as well. I'm going in here now to create the hanger. It's so important to think about all of these little details, especially if it's something that you're going to gift or sell. I mean, my philosophy is to make everything that comes out of your craft room sellable and ready to go. Even if it's just for yourself, you'll feel so proud. And I aim to be just 1% better in my crafting today than I was yesterday. These are the mindsets that take you from an amateur crafter to expert level. I've been crafting for more than 30 years, but that's not what makes beauty come out of my craft room. I mean, I'm sure it plays some role because I know what to do, what not to do. And I have somewhat of a natural instinct of knowing what goes together. But even without some or all of that, if you are just a mindful crafter, not a lazy crafter, You can pump out beautiful things that people will pay real money for. Off camera, I added a few of these half circle beads. They have kind of an iridescence to them, and I love that. Now, you cannot have a field of lavender without a butterfly, and I think it brings the entire piece together. I'm going to take these two round saucers or whatever they are from Dollar Tree. I think they're trinket trays, trinket dishes, excuse me. And I'm going to give them one coat of white acrylic paint over the top. I'm going to use painter's tape to section off these dishes. And because I stink at eyeballing anything, I put one on top of the other to make sure that the sections are the same on both dishes. I'm going in with a dark navy blue to cover this 1/3 side of the dish. And I do that on both. To protect these dishes, I took it outside off camera and gave it a spray of Rust-Oleum Clear top coat. This will protect it and get it ready for the rub-on transfers I'm going to put on it next. I'm using a lot of transfers in this video, but I feel comfortable with it because I really haven't been using them in projects on the channel much at all yet this year. In reading your comments on previous videos, I understand that you love a good rub-on transfer project. These ideas aren't new, but hopefully when I combine them with different colors and textures, they can inspire you to get creative. I gave them a top coat of matte finish, and here they are complete. Let me know in the comments what you think about this easy Dollar Tree DIY. This one's going to challenge you a little bit more, but the outcome is stunning. I'm going to take some of this fabric from the Dollar Tree that has these beautiful strawberries in shades of red and pink. The leaves are green with little white and yellow flowers. I cut this in strips and I'm going to Mod Podge it to the outside of the bottom of this box. By the way, I thrifted this box at a local thrift store for around 50 cents, a steal if you ask me. And I'm going to make it something super cute that I can put outside and store maybe some matches in it, sunblock, whatever I can find that needs a hiding place, and a pretty hiding place it shall be. This is a cotton fabric and it requires a little bit more Mod Podge than if you were using rice paper or napkins, but not much more. Once I have that down, I'm going to apply a top coat of Mod Podge to seal everything in. Allow that to dry and then reattach the hardware. We're moving on to step 2. My promise to make this a pretty DIY is just beginning. I'm going to use this strawberry mold and some mica powder. I'm taking a clean brush and pushing it into the powder in the jar. And then I'm going to paint the inside of the mold with the powder by pushing firmly and making sure that it sticks. When you do this, make sure that you get all of the edges because this is, of course, a mold, so it's inverted. You want to get all of the edges. I'm going with the traditional strawberry leaf, blossom, and fruit colors, but you can really play around and use whatever you like. If you don't have any resin on hand or just prefer to use something different, I would recommend polymer clay. I'm using the amazing casting resin, which will cure for you in 10 minutes. Watch this. I still have my gloves on and I'm going to demold the strawberries. So satisfying. Knowing that this needed to be a little bit shorter video than I normally put out, I did some of this off camera. Essentially, I placed the strawberries, leaves, and blossoms where I wanted them, and used super glue to glue them down. Now this is still malleable, so I'm going to bend one of the leaves so that it can kind of cusp over the corner here and clamp it so that it holds in place just for a few seconds for it to dry. You'll notice at the top I drew some stems on with a paint marker just to make it look as realistic as possible. While I was casting the strawberries, I had a little extra resin and poured it into a butterfly mold and created several of these little butterflies. Again, the resin is still malleable at this point, so I'm going to bend the butterfly as well and make it look like it landed on the strawberry. I'm going to use my paint markers to draw a few strawberries and fill in the design. Off camera, I had taken two more of those strawberry castings, painted them red with a green cap, and bunted them together with this tiny little hook in between to create a charm. I'm going to attach this with another one of those hooks, but first I need a hole. So I'm just taking whatever I can find that's sharp and punching a little hole in the wood. And then I'll screw another one of those little hooks in. I think these are called eye hooks or eye screws. I'm going to use a bulb pin to hang the charm from the eye hook. I'm going to call this wooden box done and work on the second piece. I also thrifted this little box, covered it up with the same strawberry fabric on the bottom, and I'm going to paint that little handle red. This one's super fast and easy. I also had cast this little picture frame and painted it in the same yellow shade that we've been using throughout the video. I'm going to attach it using super glue and then attach this strawberry, once I clean the paint off the backside, with more super glue to the center of that frame. I had rubbed some paint off, so I'm going to go in and touch that up a bit. Here I'm showing you the mold that I used. And I just wanted to show you, now I ran out of fabric for this, but look how cute it would be if you had enough fabric and lined the inside of this box. I want to attach some felt feet to protect the surface that I might put this on. And then these boxes are done. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about this one. Is it too overdone? Is it too busy? We're about to make the most stunning wreath you've seen all year using mostly Dollar Tree items. There's only one item in this entire project that's not Dollar Tree. So let's get started. I'm taking some of this white tulle. I don't know if you can get this particular white tulle right now. I haven't seen it, but this was in my stash and I picked it up last summer. I'm going to wrap the entire wreath form in this, and this will give a nice housing for the stems that we're going to apply to the wreath. I want to give it a nice bed of greenery. So I'm going to start by taking this vine that I picked up at Dollar Tree a few weeks ago, and I'm going to glue this down just in a few little areas. I don't want to have too much glue on this because if I choose to ever pull this apart, who am I kidding? This thing's gorgeous when it's done. I'm never pulling it apart. But should you want to, the less you use, the easier it'll be. Here I have a few more Dollar Tree greenery picks. I cut them off of the stem and now I'm going to cut them down to be about the same size. And now I'm just going to stick those into the tool. If I can find an area where the tool layers over the next loop, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to prick a hole with my scissors and pop it in there. A few weeks ago in Dollar Tree, looking at their florals, I found a couple of bundles of these beautiful flowers. It looks like we have some zinnias in here, some poppies, and a few other varieties. The leaves are also in great condition. These are some of the best quality flowers I found at Dollar Tree to date. I picked up the only two bundles that they had in stock at the time. I'm going to use these as the main element of the wreath, the showstopper. I think I said these were zinnias, but I think they're actually dahlias. And what I'm doing here is just cutting the heads off because really that's all I want on the wreath. I cut down a majority of the flowers that I'm going to use and I'm going to start popping them on here randomly. Really, no rhyme or reason. That's not how I create my wreaths. I don't worry about flowers being cohesive from top to bottom or left to right. I'll start with dark colors and then I'll slowly start to add in lighter, with the focus of evenly distributing the different colors and sizes. I'm now going to start to add in other flower bunches from the Dollar Tree. I'm not sure what these yellow and pink flowers are. They may be carnations. If you know, drop a comment so the rest of us can know. Going back to those first bundles, I'm going to cut off these orange flowers. I don't know what they are. They may be poppies, but I like those long leaves that stand straight up and they're going to look really cool on the wreath. Here's yet another bundle from the Dollar Tree. It has small daisies and what look like hydrangeas. The leaves are awful, and I'm good with throwing the rest of this away. The lighter color flowers will add a little light to the wreath. I think we've all seen these little burgundy flowers with the green centers. Some of them have glitter or other glistening stuff in them. These do not. But I'm going to just use these sort of as fillers and added interest. This is the element that is not Dollar Tree. I have some of these sprigs. They are really just scrap sprigs that I had in my stash. I picked these up from Walmart probably last year, but these are a staple at Walmart. You can almost always find them. I'm going to pop these in to make it look more natural and break things up a little bit. I'm going to add in some of these long, skinny flowers. They're so pretty. I almost should have sprayed these with hairspray before I started working with them. Something to keep in mind if you use these in a wreath. Look at all of that lusciousness. Excellent. I'm going to flip this over and create a hanger. If you were waiting on me to add a bow to this wreath, I'm sorry, not sorry. Bows are just not my thing, although I will use them out of desperation, which you'll see in the next DIY. I made this beehive in the last video and I was going to put it on the wreath, but I think it just makes things look a little too busy. I do put something else on, which you're going to see in a minute. Here's the wreath complete as you've seen it. And here it is with the butterfly that I did in a short. This is a sun catcher, so when I open those curtains on the door and let the light shine in, I'll be able to see it coming through that butterfly. And what a cute addition to this wreath. Hello everyone, it's Melissa with CraftCrumbs, and today we're making these adorable scarecrows. This fall DIY is so cute, it may just keep the crows coming back. I'm using a 10 and 8-inch straw hat that I thrifted, and primarily Dollar Tree items to pull this project together. And at the end, I'll show you 10 other ideas for things that you can add to your scarecrow. I'm starting off with a piece of orange fabric that I picked up at the Dollar Tree in one of those little rolls. I cut it down into a triangular shape to make the scarecrow's bandana. I'm going to attach it with hot glue around that center part of the hat. I cut about 10 inches from an adult hula skirt that I picked up at Dollar Tree. Cut down the length as well to keep it manageable. And now I'm just going to glue that to the top of that raised area of the hat, and this will be our scarecrow's hair. Finally, someone's having a worse hair day than myself. I wake up with bedhead, she wakes up with barnhead. All straw and no structure. I cut the smaller of the two hats in half, and I'm going to use that to wrangle the scarecrow's hair, much like I would use a hat to wrangle my own. I'm going to use a moderate amount of hot glue to attach the two pieces together, but leave the top part of the hat open. I did one side at a time, and it took a little while for the glue to set up, so I just held it in place with my hand and moved to the other side and repeated the process. Why did we leave the top of the hat open, you ask? We're going to give her an updo that peeks out through that top. This is the raffia that I cut off the hair earlier to shorten it, and I'm just going to fold it in half, glue inside that hat, again a nice moderate amount of glue, and just tuck that bundle right inside. And then I'm going to close up these sides so that there are no gaps. I believe I bought this ribbon with the pumpkins on it at Dollar Tree last year, but I'm not certain. I may have very well thrifted it. I have a question. When you go to the thrift store and you see things that are out of season, do you typically purchase them, or do you kind of hold off? If I purchase it far in advance, I'll take pictures of it so that I don't forget what I had stored away. And on the pictures, I will notate what my idea was for it at the time. Because otherwise, the ideas that I have for things in the moment when I'm buying will poof. I mean, they just disappear. They just disappear. Kind of like the $5 bill that disappeared from the kitchen counter last week when my daughter had a friend over. Moving to the second scarecrow, and I'm just trying to get caught up so that both of them are in the same place. Just like in the first, I'm adding some Dollar Tree leaves. Now the first one, I added the leaves to the left side and embellished it with some little crab apples. This one, the leaves are going to go on the right side. I'm also going to add some miniature corn cobs here in a moment, but for now I want to work on the face. I picked up this little craft kit from the Dollar Tree, and this kit is absolutely adorable. I'm going to open the kit that lets you build a little owl because the eyes are the perfect size. Just in case you were curious about these craft packs, there are 3 different designs that you can craft, and then there are 3 of each of those designs. So that $1.25, or who knows, maybe it's $1.50, will get you 9 little felt characters. There was nothing in the craft kit that I could use as a nose for the scarecrow, so I'm going to just cut out a triangular shape from felt that I had in my stash and pop it right below those eyes. You'll notice some mild differences between the 2 scarecrows at this point. First being that this scarecrow has a partial face. Also, I used different fabric from the Dollar Tree to create the bandana, and the hair is shorter. This textured ribbon is going to be perfect for the mouth. It has sort of a crocheted feel to it, not quite a braid, but I don't know if you can see it there. It might be difficult to see, mainly because I didn't put it up there close enough or for long enough. But just use whatever you have for this step. Everybody has a roll of ribbon they can use for the mouth. I'm going to open up a second pack of these little creatures. I think this is a turkey, and the piece that I'm going to take from here is one of the feathers, but I'm going to use it as a tongue for the scarecrow. I do have to cut it back just a little bit, and then I'm going to glue it on. Moving to the brim of the hat, I'm going to add another piece of that same ribbon and add a patch of fabric that corresponds with the bow tie that I put on the front. Now, I hope that you guys do not think that I'm cuckoo for this, but I really wanted some miniature Indian corn cobs on this project, and I couldn't find miniatures anywhere, so I decided to make my own. This is the paper bead concept, and I'm taking a 2-inch piece of paper, placing it on the paper cutter so that opposite corners line up with the area that will be cut. So what you're left with are 2 slim triangles. One side of each of these is straight while the other is at an angle. I'm going to tightly wrap this around a paper clip. Please, if you have a skewer, use that instead. I didn't have one and this was a bit of a struggle. I did get through it, but again, just wrapping it very tight and kind of gluing it as I go. Now, as I'm wrapping it, I'm keeping the flat side lined up, and that's what's going to give me a cone shape. For the second corn cob, I switched to the handle of a paintbrush, and this was much easier. There are special tools that you can buy for this process, but they are oddly very expensive, so we're just going to wing it with what we have, and this works out just fine. If you've made paper beads, let me know in the comments. This is a throwback to bead creation from back in the day. Don't ask me how far back because I have no idea. I just know that it is a throwback craft and many people still practice this art today. Of course, I don't think they're making corn cobs, but they should be. The white edges of the paper were very visible, so I'm going to give it a light coat of brown acrylic paint. I'm going to open up a strand of the raffia so that I have a long, flat strip of it. And then I'm going to cut that into 3 individual pieces and glue them crisscross over one another to the bottom of the corn cob. I use my scissors to kind of round the edges, and then I'm going to bring them up and glue them down. Here I'm just testing the size to see if it makes sense for the project, and it does. To make Indian corn, I'm just going to use my orange and yellow paint markers to dot on the kernels. Here I'm going back to our first scarecrow, the one with the longer hair, and I'm adding her facial features. And then I'm taking some of the hair from the top, flipping it over and gluing it down. And this will cover the glue that's showing from when I attached the 2 hats together. Both of these scarecrows are getting a simple jute hanger on the back. As promised, here are 10 additional ideas for things that you could potentially add to your scarecrow. Idea number 1 would be faux greenery, or you can take something like this from the backyard that you've dried. Idea number 2 is burlap. We all need a little burlap in our fall DIYs. Idea number 3 would be twigs or branches from your own backyard. Idea number 4 is faux flowers in fall colors. Idea number 5 is decorative trim. These can often be added to projects to give it a little flair, and you get a lot of bang for your buck. Idea number 6 would be old jewelry that you've thrifted or taken out of your own collection. Now, just because it looks gaudy on you doesn't mean that it can't look precious on your scarecrow. Idea number 7, charms. You can put one of these small charms, 2 of the charms if you like, or 10, whatever your heart desires, on your scarecrow. You can attach these with safety pins, bulb pins, or even a piece of thread. Idea number 8, sequins. Sequins come in a large variety of shapes, sizes, and colors, and you can either glue or sew them onto your project. Idea number 9, buttons. The most basic of craft supplies, we all tend to have a nice stash of these. Here I'm pulling out a red button in the shape of an apple. Would look cute on top of the bow. Or you could do something like this where I add 3 to the handkerchief. And finally, idea number 10. You could assemble one or more of the felt characters and add it to the top of the hat or anywhere else on your scarecrow. It would be precious. Abilities are endless. Use some, all, or none of the ideas I've given you here today to create your scarecrow. And when it's done, send me a picture. I'd love to see it. The third fall DIY is one that I'm super excited to bring you. I roasted about a cup and a half of fresh coffee grounds that I purchased at the Dollar Tree in the oven for 2 to 3 minutes at 225 degrees. While they were roasting, I filled the entire house with the sweet smell of coffee, which I'll take over the smell of a candle any day. I'm using a small votive from the Dollar Tree and a piece of canvas fabric that I had in my stash. You can use any kind of fabric or even ribbon for this step. I'm rounding those corners because we're going to Mod Podge this to the votive, and rounded corners are more likely to stay down. Before I do the gluing though, I want to add some detail, so I'm going to stamp on a flower just lightly to the canvas fabric. And this is the first time I've ever used one of those glass plates to apply a stamp. I typically use whatever I can find nearby, like the back of the stamp pad or the lid to the stamp pad or whatever. And one of you lovely people watching has recommended this glass stamp applicator thingy, and I was a little resistant to it at first because I really do like to use what I have rather than buying extra things. But I stand corrected. This did make the application much easier and I had less mess. If you've been watching me, you've seen me mess up these stamps time and time again, and my little naive brain didn't realize that there was an easier way. That being cheap is not always the best way to handle things. One of the main reasons I DIY as much as possible is so I don't find myself crying at the checkout. That would be weird. That would be awkward, right? Okay, I'll get back to the project. I am using a moderate amount of Mod Podge to get the canvas fabric onto this little votive. I'm going to do the same on a small lidded jar that I bought from Hobby Lobby recently. Set them aside to dry and come back to finish the project and get into the good stuff. I set these aside to dry for about 30 minutes, and coming back, I'm going to cover the canvas fabric with masking tape. I'm going to make sure that the edges of the masking tape are cut very straight so I get a straight line when I'm adding the coffee grounds. And I'm leaving about a centimeter, possibly 2 centimeters, around the edge of the canvas exposed. I'm going to use Mod Podge very generously here to cover the glass and then start sprinkling on the coffee grounds. As I go, I'm gently pushing the coffee grounds into the glue. I realized I needed a little more glue and coffee grounds on the bottom of the jar, so I took care of that and set this aside to dry for about 15 minutes. Coming back, I'm going to use my little hand broom here to brush off any loose coffee, and now I'm going to apply the second coat exactly the way I did the first. I allowed this to dry overnight, and now I'm just removing the masking tape that covered the canvas fabric. And I'll use my X-Acto knife to clean up any edges that look a little ragged. and we'll give it a nice smooth edge. I'm using the same knife to clean up the top edge and scrape off any glue that was hardened on there. And I'm just going to do the same thing to the second jar. The next time you're at the grocery store or the Dollar Tree, pick up a Frappuccino and use the bottle to create a larger version of this same DIY. I took the lid to the Frappuccino bottle as well as the flexible lid that came with the second smaller jar we did outside to give them a coat of black matte paint. I'm going to come back to the smaller jars and add some final touches. I used my circle template to trace and cut out 1.5-inch circles from that same canvas fabric, and I'll use a couple of those to embellish these glass pieces. I'm adding some hemp cord around the edges of the circle to finish it off. To make it a little more fun, I'm going to use a scrap piece of mesh fabric that I have, and I'm going to just add that right before adding this little paper flower. Look how cute that is. I'll link this mesh fabric down below for you. It comes in a pack of different varieties of what's called material paper, and a lot of it is very useful in crafts, even if you're not a paper craft. If you're a paper crafter, you'll love them, but if you're not a paper crafter, you'll love them for things like this. Walmart sells packs of paper doilies that are better quality than the Dollar Tree, and I like to tea dye them and just hang on to them for random crafts. And that's what I've done here. I've grabbed one out of my stash and I'm going to add it underneath the lid, add a few buttons to the front, and then this one will be done. Here's the Frappuccino bottle. For this one, I did the exact same thing, but instead of using canvas fabric, I used wired ribbon, but pulled the wire out of it. I'm going to speed through this because you've already seen the process, but I do want to tell you that if you do not have coffee grounds, but you have tea bags, you can certainly use the tea out of the tea bags. When you're finished using your tea bags, you simply set them under the sun to dry. Then just cut those tea bags open and store the grounds inside an airtight container. I usually keep the tea bag itself as well because it's now a beautiful tea dyed stain and great to use in a variety of projects. For the Frappuccino lid, because this was slightly larger, I used another one of those canvas fabric circles, but I frayed the edges for a little more interest. Once again, fraying just the sides of another one of these circles. I'll add a few extras to the bottle for a polished finish and call this one done as well. I think it's worth mentioning that if you want to recreate this and follow the steps that I've laid out for you in this video, you're not going to have coffee grounds falling off of your glassware. If you do have coffee grounds falling off and you've done everything to fix it but can't, I mean, I really don't think that's going to happen, but if it's a concern, then just cover the grounds with a coat of dark brown paint. You could probably even seal it with a clear top coat, but I have not personally tried that. To demonstrate what it would look like with the coat of brown paint, I'm going to show you this one after being painted next to the others that weren't painted in just a sec. There we go. Boy, that was a quick sec. You can see I added a variety of buttons, paper flowers, and even crocheted flowers to decorate these, but there are countless different things that you can use to customize yours and make it more your personality. Let me know in the comments what you think about this coffee or tea DIY for fall. We're starting off strong, let me tell you. I forgot to record the first several steps of this DIY. I made this using a Dollar Tree wood blank and 5-gallon paint sticks. I'm going to grab the measurements here. The sides were 17.5 inches, and the end pieces were 5 3/4 inches. I used wood glue, any wood glue would do, to attach the paint sticks to the sides. I used tape to hold the paint sticks in place while the glue dried. To ensure this piece would stand the test of time, I wanted to brace the inside back corners and use tumbling tower blocks to do this. I'm not going to glue this second row of tower blocks down. I'm just cutting them down and placing them so you can see how I did this off camera. I had 3 of these lovely wood leaves from the Dollar Tree. I think there were 4 or 5 staples that I had to remove before I could get it out of the cardboard packaging. Now, these did have some wood beads and tassels on them. I removed those because we're not going to need them for this project. I started off giving each of the leaves a dry brush of white acrylic paint, and now I'm going in and giving another dry brush of antiquing wax. I'm going to set those aside to dry and work on the main base. Once again, just a light dry dusting of white acrylic paint. You can use chalk paint if you prefer. And then around the sides, I'm going to go over those with a brush in the antiquing wax, but I'll come back to those in a few minutes. Just to provide a little bit of contrast, I'm going to outline the edges of this wood piece. This way, if you hang it on a light colored wall, it'll stand out. I wanted to lighten up the sides a bit, so I'm going to go in with a little bit more white dry brushing to do just that. So I made the leaves look aged. Now I want to go back in after they've dried and reintroduce a little bit of color. Using just the same colors that were originally on them, but a little lighter shade, I'm going to once again just dry brush over. You'll still be able to see a peak of the white acrylic paint as well as the antiquing wax, and it really brings these leaves together nicely. Really makes them look high end. The leaves will have a nice sheen to them, which stands out from the more matte finish on the board. I know this video is moving pretty quickly, so here's a recap of how I applied the color. If you find yourself enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up. This lets YouTube know that the content is good enough to push out to other crafters. And if you come back time and time again, or completely new to the channel but haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and take a chance on me. You can always unsubscribe if you want to. I'm going to start to glue the leaves to the board. Now, these leaves had sort of a concave back side to it where there was a rivet or kind of a lower, well, you know what a concave is, right? Think about one of your cutting boards in the kitchen. So the center of the leaves required a little bit more glue than the outer edges. I'm using a micro brush to go around the edges and remove any glue seepage. This is what it looks like so far. Maybe I should have kept those outer edges darker. Let me know what you think. I like to make the back side of my projects look clean and finished. So I'm going to go in and just cover every little nook and cranny of this inside back part with white acrylic paint. I'm going to add a sawtooth hanger to another tumbling tower block and glue it so that the hanger is flush with the outer edge of the wood piece. And that way it will not stand out from the wall at all. It'll hang nice and flush. This can also be a shelf leaner. Here it is complete and staged as a shelf leaner. And here it is hanging on the wall in my kitchen. Oh my gosh, I so need to paint the walls in the kitchen. Isn't it funny how you have to take a photo of something to see how mortifying it is? Here's a closer look at the detail. Let me know in the comments what you think about our first fall DIY using Dollar Tree products. I have one of these little propagation stations, or at least I think that's what it is. I've seen TikTok and YouTube videos where people are using it to sort their makeup and paintbrushes. And this is my test. Yeah, no, it's not working as this. So we're going to DIY and make it something totally different. Let's get rid of this. Just kidding, I still have it. But we're not using it in this project, and I can assure you it would not sound like that if I threw it. It would sound like a tiny little thud on the floor because this thing is made of acrylic. I noticed it had a pretty sizable scuff mark, so if you're purchasing these, just be on the lookout for little blemishes like that. I want the acrylic box to have a lid, but something that looks more natural and high end. I had this crate in my stash, so I'm pulling it out and it will work, but it needs a little bit of adjusting. I'm using my handy ruler to mark where I need to cut. Now you can use an X-Acto knife, but it will take you a little while, I have to admit. Many passes. Even with a sharp blade, this thing was taking me several passes. But it can be done. I, however, couldn't be bothered to play with this mess because I have a tool that could make it easier. If you don't have a rotary tool, then just use whatever you have to cut these off. The X-Acto knife, I think, would be the last resort because it does take a little while. Now you could score it with the X-Acto knife and then use a chisel and a hammer to chip off the areas that you don't need, but you'll see what I'm going to do with the rotary tool. I'm first changing out the sanding bit and replacing it with a cutting blade. I believe I picked these up from Amazon. If I did, I will link them down below for you. When you're doing this, just make sure that that booger is on there tight. What I typically do is I pull on the shaft to make sure that it's nice and secure before I turn it on. I'm starting off on just a very low speed, and you should too if you're not real experienced with these. So I started off on a very low speed of number 2, and I think I move it up as I go and become more comfortable with how it's cutting. There we go. Just turn it up a little bit more, and I turn it up a little bit more. You can work your way up to the faster speeds. Once those are cut off, I'm just going to go in with my sanding block and make sure everything's nice and smooth. Woohoo! It's not going anywhere. Look at that. Now I'm dipping into my stash of little handles. Should we call them love handles? I don't know. I just love all of these little handle options. I would have way more if it were up to me, but it's up to the budget. Once again, I'm running into a little bit of an issue. This is the handle that I picked out, but it is not going to go through. The screw is just too short. That's okay. We will modify. Whatever drill bit you have to open up the center part enough to let the bolt pass through. Here's what the inside looks like once the knob is attached. If this bothers you, you could certainly take one of these 1-inch wood discs that you can pick up at the Dollar Tree, and I think a pack of 6 or 8, and cover that up. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. In the fall, I love to have a place where I can put a display of dried flowers and potpourri together. The slats in the palette allow the scent to come through. It's a snug enough fit so that the lid will not fall off if it's bumped or moved. It smells so good. I wish this was smell-o-vision. Please let me know in the comments what you think about our second fall DIY using Dollar Tree supplies. Is this something you would try? Is this something you would keep or gift? At the start of each season, I make something for the coffee table. This is what I made last year. It was beautiful, but this year I want something that can carry me through Christmas as well. I had this Dollar Tree charger. I probably bought this charger 3 or 4 years ago and haven't seen it since, but you can use any charger that you have on hand. I covered the front and back of the tray with a matte black spray paint by Rust-Oleum. You can see some blemishes there on the top, and that's basically where I had put my fingers accidentally and then sprayed over it to fix those areas. I'm going to be using a few different shades of brown paint, and I'm cutting up one of these round sponges to use as an applicator. To get the rusty tray look I'm going for, I'm going to start pouncing on one color at a time and blending in the others as I go. I'm using black paint to soften the edges of the brown. Here I'm adding in this really rusty shade of brown. It's almost an orange shade, and this is almost not visible at all in the end project. So going back, if I had to do this again, I would totally skip this color. I want the final piece to have sort of a muted rusty look, but there are several points in playing back this video that I thought I could have totally stopped and it would have been absolutely beautiful. I will say that when you're working with a bright light above you, it can be difficult to see what the actual project looks like. There were multiple occasions where I pulled it away from my desk, although I don't think you can see much, if any, of that, where I just kind of pull it off the table, turn my chair around, and look at it. But I still didn't have the best idea until I was playing this back as to what it was looking like as I was going. Here's an example of where I could have stopped and been very happy with the outcome of the tray, but I wanted to make it a little darker, so I'm adding in a smidge more black. I don't know when to stop on a project, but hey, if a little paint is good, then 3 pounds of paint must be amazing. To give it a touch of class, I'll go around the edge with metallic gold paint, and then I'll protect it with Rust-Oleum's high gloss top coat. Here it is complete. I've staged it here with a pumpkin that I made in a video last year. It was a Kathy Joe dupe. I'll put the link to that video in the description as well as at the end of this one. I think the high gloss sheen on this tray makes it look so rich. I'm excited to use this for fall as well as for Christmas. I'm starting with two of these wood oval shapes from the Dollar Tree, and I was trying to decide what color I wanted to paint in. I have the hazelnut or the cashew, and I feel like with the cashew, you might as well just leave it a natural color because it so closely matches natural wood. So I'm going to go in with a coat of hazelnut on the top surface of each of these oval shapes. That paint is almost dry, so I'm going to go in around the edges with a smaller paintbrush and white acrylic paint to make the hazelnut color pop. I took my time doing that and ended with a nice crisp line. Now it's time to add a little detail. I had these Dollar Tree half pearls and I'm going to break them off. Now they can come off in a strip, but I wanted to have a little bit more space between each one, so I'm just kind of using my glue and putting them down with a little space between each pearl bead. And I'm just kind of getting it down, and then I'll use my tweezers and fingers to get them where I want them to be. I'm using glitter glue that I had dispensed into this small detail bottle, and that's holding these beads on perfectly fine. Here I'm showing you where I pulled off an entire strand so that if you wanted to make life easier for yourself and like this idea, you don't necessarily have to pull off the individual beads like I'm doing. Off camera, I took this outside and gave it a coat of spray Mod Podge. You have to take this outside to spray because the smell is horrific. I'm sure it does terrible things to your health, so take my advice, go outside and spray. It dries very quickly, and then we're back inside to finish the project. I'm going to attach pine and berry using my brad nailer. This brad nailer doubles as a staple gun, and it's very easy to push the button and get them to come out. I'm going to cover the stems with a few scrap pieces of burlap. I'm gluing down the sides so that I have a place to glue it to the wood piece. And I did fray the top and bottom as well, just for a little extra character. And we'll just pop that on there. First, I needed to clip off some of these stems so that I could make it shorter and less visible. There we go. She's coming together. These are so cute. I feel like I want to name them. What would you guys name them? First, let's pick a bow. I had some of these red ones. I don't know where they came from. Same with the gold, but I didn't feel like they did the project justice. So I'm going to go with one of these black and white gingham bows from the Dollar Tree. It'll cover up the wonky burlap bag that I put at the bottom there. Okay, so to hang it, you have a few choices. One of them would be to just use a sawtooth hanger and hammer that in. That's probably the easiest, but I don't like the idea of creating a gap between the wood piece and the wall. So I'm going to go with some of this velvet ribbon, and I'm choosing this color because it closely matches the hazelnut paint we put on the front. I'm going to add a little bit of glue right in there and squeeze it together to add a little stability when hanging. And here they are, complete. These came together so quickly and the turnout is gorgeous. I want to know what you think though, and what should we name these? Holly and Jolly? Is that corny? I'm looking for ideas and suggestions. I'm going to use a pack of 6 ping pong balls that I picked up at Dollar Tree and jute twine from Amazon. I'm going to snip off a small piece to give me a nice starting point, and then I'm going to coil this on itself until I have about a dime size coil. You could go as far as a nickel size, whatever you can manage in your hands. Using hot glue, I'll attach this to the bottom of one of the ping pong balls. Just like that, very easy. And now I'm going to come in with Aleene's gel tacky glue. I'm going to use my silicone tool to smooth out the glue so that it doesn't seep between the rope. I'm going to keep coiling until I've covered almost the entire ball. I'm going to leave a small amount of the top exposed because we're going to cover it up. I'm changing back to hot glue just to pin down that final piece. And now we have 4 of the 6 balls just like this. For the last 2, I'm going to do the exact same thing but cover the entire ball. It becomes more of a challenge there at the top, so you have to walk it a little bit with your fingers. And here I'm just going to make a loop and tack that down with hot glue. And then I'm going to continue wrapping around it, and this is going to be the hanger for our ornament. Just like that. I'm just going to wrap and finish that off. We're going to make the first of our 6 character ornaments, starting with the reindeer. I have some of these sticks that I pulled from the backyard, and I'm going to use my pokey tool and my hot glue gun to make a hole in the top of the ball, and then push 2 of the twigs down in there. I have 3 different sizes, a long, medium, and shorter, and I'm going to use those to make the antlers. You might have sticks in your backyard that already look like antlers, and if you do, save yourself some time and use those instead. You might think that these smaller pieces will fall off because I'm only using a small dot of hot glue, but hot glue adheres tremendously well wood to wood, so they're not going anywhere. I'm going to sort through my small stash of beads here for some eyes and a nose for the reindeer. These ornaments turn out so adorable. The deer is one of my favorites. We're also going to make a snowman and an elf. I truly can't wait to show you the elf. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. I'm using hemp cord to create the mouth and the little bridge that goes up to the nose. You can use embroidery floss for this. You can even draw it on with a marker. I'm trying to turn up the corners of the mouth to make the deer smile. And why not a red bead for the nose? The other 4 ornaments, which is going to be 2 snowmen and 2 elves, all need a hat. So I took a 4x4 square of cotton fabric, and this is just a thin strip of white felt. You can see how I cut the fabric like a cone, and now I'm just gluing it to that strip of felt. I'm going to fold it in half so the wrong sides are facing out and just zip a little bit of hot glue up that one edge. And then I'm going to turn this right side out. Getting these little points out is always the biggest pain. I'm going to stuff it with polyfill, and then I'm going to roll a tight ball of polyfill up in my hands to create the, what's that thing called? The poop at the end of the hat. I'm going to embellish with a small piece of holly and get to work on the face. I'm going to use hot glue to attach the hat, and then adding a strip of hot glue here to give the hat a little bend. To add a hanger, I'm going to use my detail scissors and snip the tiniest hole in the hat. Taking another piece of that jute rope, and I'm going to tie the end of it in a knot. This is going to allow it to stick a little bit better inside that hole, and I'm going to adhere that in there also with hot glue. Pushing it in just to make sure it's really in there. And that completes the snowman. Moving on to the elf, we're going to do the exact same thing with a few different details. This is a piece of brown felt, and I'm cutting out bangs for the elf. Do they look like bangs? They look like bangs, right? Let's hot glue them on and see. I'm taking another piece of felt. This color more closely matches the rope, and I'm going to attempt to cut out some ears, as though that first ear was perfect and I could use it as a template for the others. They don't even look like ears, but they do once they're on here. I'm going to glue those so that the back is kind of free flying, and it's going to overlap the bangs. We're going to add a little face. I'm going to put just a tiny mouth, a very smiley mouth on this. And then gluing the hat on. Here I have both of them. Now on this one, I wizened up and I actually opened up the seam and put the rope inside that. I'm going to add some embellishments. And a little bow. Heck, let's put a bow on all of them. It looks super cute on the reindeer. And here they are complete. Look at these sweet little faces. Oh my gosh. Look at that one. That one looks disgruntled. When I found this at Dollar Tree, it was wrapped in kind of shrink wrap. There was really no indication as to what it was. I assumed it was some sort of a trinket box, but when I got home and opened it, I realized it's just two useless little shelf sitters, maybe. But we're going to DIY and turn it into winter/Christmas decor. I'm going to use some tumbling tower blocks. This is the larger set of blocks for $3. And there I'm showing you the comparison in size. Now you can use the smaller tumbling tower blocks. You're just going to need more blocks to work it out. But I'm going to glue these together and make sort of a stand for what's to come. I'm using 6 tower blocks in this first step, and then I'll come back and use a 7th in a later step. I'm going to set those aside to dry and get started on the boxes. This paper was perfect for the outside edges of the box, and now I'm going in to pick something for the inside. To get the inside, I'm kind of measuring so that I don't have to waste paper because I only have 2 sheets of this paper, so I don't want to mess it up. So I'm just sort of measuring the box, putting the measurements on the paper, and then I'll cut it out. And it's almost a perfect fit when I'm done. I'm going to use Elmer's rubber glue to attach this to the inside of the box. This stuff is amazing for paper. It doesn't warp, it doesn't wrinkle it. And just like the Mod Podge spray, it has a pretty strong smell. So you don't want to leave this open on the desk any longer than you have to. Because it was almost a perfect fit, not quite, I'm spending time kind of smoothing everything out. And here's what they look like at this point. I sanded off the edges of the paper, and now we have the white edge of the paper exposed at the top. So I'm just going to use a little bit of black ink over those and cover it up. Anywhere you have those white edges peeking out, you can do that. Kind of distress it if you like. Moving back to the stands, it's about 15 minutes later and these are completely dry. I'm going to add the 7th piece right here to the back. This is actually my second time adding it. The first time I added it, I realized I didn't place it correctly, so I removed it and reinstalling. And the larger of the two boxes is going to sit here on the bottom, and that 7th piece is going to act as a stopper, sort of, to keep it from going back any further than I want it to. A little dab of wood glue right here is going to keep all of this in place. After allowing that to dry for about 15 minutes, I painted the entire stand black with the exception of the two ends that are facing up. I painted the underside of each of the two boxes with the exception of the space where the stand is going to glue to the smaller box. That's going to be a more fixed piece, whereas the bottom is going to be removable. I had a circle, which is, I think this is 3.5-inch wood blank circle. I painted that black, but left the bottom portion of it natural so I could glue it to the box without any issue. Added a little Christmas tree, and now we're going to assemble everything. Here I'm just checking the fit to make sure everything lines up correctly. I'm just going to add a little weight here and let this dry. I've never done a tiered tray on my channel before because I know it's been done time and time again, and I really strive to bring you different crafts, but I think that this one is slightly different, right? And what else would you do with these rectangular boxes? Here I have it staged with potpourri, but as we get closer to Christmas, I'll probably fill these little boxes up with candy. I love me some Hershey Kisses and Werther's Originals, whatever will fit in here. I'm ripping my sheet music in strips. You don't have to rip it. You can certainly give it a clean, straight edge with your paper trimmer. That's totally fine. I'm also going to rip off pieces of packing paper and my tea bags. Those get ripped in half. I'm bringing in white cotton fabric and I'm going to rip those into strips. I love the little strings that come from this. I'm going to remove the longest ones and leave the rest. And using some polyfill, we'll put that aside. And now some of these little paper doilies that I tea dyed months ago, cut those in half, and I'm going to use some cinnamon sticks. I zoomed out a bit so you can see more of my craft space here as I pull the different elements together. I'm using more of the wax thread, and it measures 20 inches before I put it on the needle and 10 after. Besides the natural elements that I'm using to make these ornaments, I'm also going to use a couple of beads, and I think I used just one of those red stars you see up there in the left corner. After threading the bead on, I'm going to start adding some of these other elements. These little squares are going to provide a nice base to the bottom of the project and let everything rest on top. Almost every element that I add to the ornament is either going to be scrunched up to some degree, like, or folded sort of like an accordion. So I'll let you watch. It'll make more sense as you see me do it. When adding the fabric, as well as the sheet music strips, I'm going to fold one end under or over for that matter. That's going to help create a loop effect. So you can loop them so that the part that you're folding is over or under. It doesn't matter. You can rotate them. I'm going to leave those long tails intact because I'm going to loop them back around again. Adding in a small amount of polyfill. I was going to add the doily next, but I decided to instead add the cinnamon. I punctured a hole in it and fed the sewing needle through. I'm going to loop more of the sheet music and the fabric back into the ornament. These things do not have to be neat. In fact, the sloppier, the better. The idea of looping the fabric and the sheet music is just to add one or two elements that look intentional. Everything else can be haphazard and even sloppy in some respects. I'm just rotating through the different pieces of material that I have, and then once I'm through them all, I'm going to start again. I'm periodically holding the ornament up and giving it a look over just to see that everything is hanging the way I want it to. And I can continue to build this as tall as I want. The finished product on this, I believe, is about 3 by 3 in diameter, not quite the size of a tennis ball. My hope is that as you watch me build these, your wheels are spinning and thinking about all of the different elements you can add to yours. If you recreate this, I recommend that you create piles of the different elements you want to use and keep rotating through them, adding them in until that pile is down to nothing. You might remember I used a layer of packing paper to begin the process, and I'm going to use more packing paper to end it. And then I'm going to add on another bead to cap it off. I'm making the hanger quite long because I think it adds a touch of sophistication to the ornament. Here's where you can go in and kind of maneuver the different pieces and make them sit the way you want them to. So pretty. I'm going to show you the other two that I made for a set of three. Now, the third one, I opted to put the little star on the top instead of a bead. It felt a little naked, so I added a messy jute bow at the top. I love how the white thread from the cotton fabric just hangs freely. It adds just that special touch. These were so much fun to make, and I hope you agree with their beauty. They're simple, simple beauty. And we can take things from our scrap stash in the craft room or even things from the recycle bin to make our own. And look how cute these are. And the best part, they smell like cinnamon. Let me know in the comments what you think about these. I know they're a little crazy, right? They're during the holiday season, little red pickup trucks surge in popularity as a cherished symbol of Christmas nostalgia. They're often depicted hauling a Christmas tree or packages and evoke a sense of warmth, tradition, and simpler times. Every year around this time, Dollar Tree has some sort of little truck like this, and these were the first ones that really grabbed my attention because they really do remind me of a truck that my grandfather used to have. He towed us kids around in the back of the truck to run daily errands or to go do fun things. But boy, if you tried to do that these days, somebody would get arrested. But a lot of fond memories of my brothers and sisters and I in the back of that old truck. I'm using a 5-gallon paint stick and measuring where I need to cut. I'm going to take this downstairs into my basement where I have my cutting tools and use the miter saw to cut this stick down. Now, I do transfer the measurements onto a paint stick that doesn't have the handle cut out there at the top. But if all you have is one like this with the handle cut out, that's totally fine. It's going to work out beautifully for this project as well. So I'm back. I've cut these pieces down to size, and these two smaller pieces will pose as the front and the back that kind of close things up for us. The miter saw is a bit much for cutting paint sticks, so the wood splintered, and I'm just going to sand that away. I'm using a few 2-ounce paint bottles just to hold this up for a few minutes while it dries. I set it aside for 5-10 minutes, give or take. It really doesn't take long for the wood glue to grab. After that brief wait time, I come back in and add the front part of the truck. At this point, I hadn't yet added the 1-inch square piece of wood to close off the back because I was going to try to do something like a partially open gate with a fake chain. I was more or less thinking about creating an interactive element for it, a tailgate that could open and close. But I ultimately decided against it and added that piece off camera. I don't know why I'm fiddling with the truck right here, but I think I'm just trying to get things lined up. I stepped away from it for about 10 minutes and came back to paint. Even though it's the little red truck that's popular, I wanted to go with a more neutral tone. I'm using chalk paint in the color Elephant, and then I'll dry brush it lightly with white paint. I'm using a wool brush to get a simple and complete application. Adding those few spritz of water to the paint definitely made it more movable. I used a smaller paintbrush to go into the nook and crannies so I didn't have any unpainted areas. You might be wondering why I made the truck so slim, and that's simply because I'm looking for a place to put greeting cards as they arrive. So, year after year, I have taped them to the wall, attached them to a garland. I've tried so many ways to display Christmas cards that loved ones have sent and was never able to find one that I liked. It usually looks like a very cluttered area. So, I thought, I'm going to just create something like this to keep Christmas cards in, and they'll kind of like all be condensed into one small place and instead of plastered to the wall. I wanted to add a little bit of detail to the truck. I had this wreath that I at some point removed from a Dollar Tree Christmas sign, and I'm just going to glue that to the front. I'm going to do some additional painting and then finish the details. I bought these stickers from Hobby Lobby last year, and let me tell you, they are super sticky. I had trouble getting them on because they kept sticking to my fingers or sticking to each other. So I'm not going to add any glue to these like I normally would add to a sticker that I'm putting on wood because these babies are not going anywhere. I'm piecing this one strand together because when I was wrestling with it, I tore it. And the little lights keep flipping over in the wrong direction, so it was a bit time consuming to put these on, but very much worth it in the end. On the opposite side, I'm trying to outsmart the sticker and be more careful applying it. But, there should be a warning on these saying you may not be able to outsmart the sticker. Look, look, just fiddling with it because it's not going on the way I want, but boy, they're so pretty and so impactful. I just love them. Now, where the bulbs stick up above the gate, I'm pushing those down and adhering them to the top. I don't want my Christmas cards to get stuck on those. I had some of these little holly stickers again from Hobby Lobby. Now, these were sticky, but not quite as sticky, so I'm adding just a little bit of Elmer's glue to the backside to make sure that they stay put. Look how cute. Let's decorate the wheels. I have my 2-inch hole punch. If you don't have a hole punch, that's okay. Maybe use one of your 8-ounce chalk paint lids to cut out a circle. I thought the Dollar Tree glitter paper would add the glam I want to the wheels. Here you can see me tracing out sort of like a crescent shape to shorten this circle, and then we'll use those pieces that we cut off as the wheel covers. I'm going to use Aleene's tacky glue to attach the paper to the wheels. I realized that applying the glue directly to the inside of the wheel was a bit too much glue, so this time I'm just putting a little dot of it on the paintbrush, and then I will apply it to the wheel before adding the paper. This truck is so cute. Right there at the top where you can see the wheel looks a little wet, that's just because I took a baby wipe over it to remove the excess glue. And I'm clamping it down with some of my little clamps because those little corners wanted to peel up before it was dry. The backing of the paper was sticking out like a sore thumb, so I'm going to go in and cover that with more of the black acrylic paint, and they'll just kind of disappear. Maisie visited me and told me that the truck needs a headlight, so there shall be headlights. Using that same glitter paper, trying to do it around her attention seeking was a bit challenging, but she likes being up here, so I let her up sometimes. She usually comes up when I've been here too long. And why not a little handle? I did use the same paper to add a license plate and a handle to the back of the truck, but for some reason didn't take a picture of that to show you. And here it is complete. Even with all of the mini dry time sessions between each step, I was This next one is another very easy one. I used this mold that I picked up from Amazon. It came with all three of these little silicone molds that you see here. I'm using my Daz clay to make several of the small bulb. I also made a few of the larger bulbs just for future projects. This next step is optional. I'm using white gesso to prime these babies before I add acrylic paint. I chose the 5 most common bulb colors for this, but you could really get creative with the different colors of bulbs that you use. I went with copper acrylic paint to cover the ends. I'm going to apply them to this gold charger. Now, this charger was in my stash of probably 15 other chargers that I at some point decided I wanted to craft with, and I'm not 100% sure this particular charger came from the Dollar Tree, but I know that Dollar Tree has gorgeous options if you wanted to recreate this. I'm going to use a black paint marker to daisy chain these lights together. Using the same paint marker, I'm going to color every other one of these faux beads around the outer edge of the charger. I gave this piece about 24 hours to dry before taking it outside and giving it a top coat of Rust-Oleum lacquer for an ultra clear shine. And this is what it looks like complete. I think this is absolutely stunning, but I want to know what you think. Every time I buy a mason jar to craft with, I end up not using the lid and throw it in this here bag. Now I have a mini collection of these lids and I want to turn them into ornaments. The concept of turning a canning jar lid into a Christmas ornament is not new, but I'm hoping that you will enjoy my take on it. I'm going to make 3 ornaments, and to make them, I need 3 of the inside part of the canning lid and then 6 of the outside, like the outer loop of the canning lid. I am using origami paper here. It's double-sided and pretty. I think I bought this off of Amazon in a larger pack, and these were the last 3 sheets that I had. But I essentially cut this down to fit the inside of this part of the canning lid, and I'm going to use glue to attach that inside. This is Fabric Fix. So Fabric Fix and Fabric Tack are both excellent for adhering paper to any surface because it's not water-based and it doesn't cause the paper to buckle or wrinkle up. I'm just going to wipe off that excess on the back, and it's already coming together. I'm going to use one of these little mini trees from the Dollar Tree. I have a couple of different sizes here, so I was just trying them out. I didn't use any green for this project, but I end up loving this so much I may make more of them and put some of the green trees in here. So this one's a little too big. This one's a little too small, so I'm going to make a slight adjustment. This is definitely the size that I want, but it overlaps that top outer edge. So I'm just going to screw off the base, take my wire cutters and cut just about 1 millimeter off of this stem and reattach the base. I'm going to create a snowy scene on the inside using Snow Tech. I don't use this material very often because I find it hard to apply to detailed projects, but for something like this, using a craft stick to apply it is super easy. I'm going to do the same thing on the second lid, and I'm going to apply some of the snow to the back side at the bottom there on that wood piece because I'm not going to be able to reach that once I get the tree glued in. This Snow Tech stuff is very messy. Here I'm just showing you how I clean clay and Snow Tech and other things that are similar in texture off of my hands. It's just one of these sponges that's soft on one side and sort of a Brillo on the other side, and it works wonders to clean your hands quickly. Now I'm going to take the other lid and adhere that down using hot glue. So I'm going in and I'm just going to touch it up. I'm going to try to smooth the snow out as much as possible to make it look like it's fresh snow and not walked on. But I don't do very well with that. So when gluing the two lids together, I did have a smidge of a gap between the two. So I'm using the Snow Tech to cover it up at the bottom. And then I'll embellish the outside to not only make it pretty, but to cover that gap. All right, so I have this strand of pearls. This came in a bag that I picked up of miscellaneous items from Goodwill, and I love it. I'm just going to go over that outside edge. I want to create a little bit more of a raise and also cover that gap we just spoke about. Once I get up to the top, I'm going to create sort of a built-in hanger, if you will. I'm going to add one more layer to the outside of the ornament. And this is where that strand of little beads is going to come into play because it gives just enough raise to add a little bit more dimension to the entire ornament. It's also going to lock it in so that that bead strand doesn't go anywhere. The trim I'm using to do this is absolutely gorgeous. I can't remember for the life of me where I got it. Part of me wants to think that it came in one of the bundle packs of trim that you can pick up at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Probably Michael's if I had to guess because they tend to have prettier trims in their packs. But boy, if I can find this stuff again, I'm all over it. If you don't have this, just pull out something pretty of your own. And now that bead strand is in there snug as a bug and the ornament is almost ready to be hung, but we're going to add one more detail. Two more details. Detail number 1 and detail number 2. The Snow Tech doesn't take as long as you might think to dry. I set these aside for about 2 hours without touching them and came back and it was almost completely dry and ready to hang. Here they are complete. This is just a little mini tree because I don't have my main tree out yet. I'll have that out in a couple of days and I cannot wait. But this is what they look like complete, and I'm so happy with the turnout on these. How pretty. I definitely want to make more of these. For the final DIY, we're going back into the card section at the Dollar Tree, and I'm looking specifically for 2 cards that have large images. Something like this is beautiful, but it's too intricate for what we're going to be doing. Here's another example, too intricate. This is an example of exactly what we need. So I'm starting off with this snowman. I'm going to use another one of these 5x7 frames, and here's the throwback that I promised you earlier. We're going to be using Shrinkadinks. I used these in a previous video to make a charm for a summer project, I believe. and received so many positive comments. People were super excited about it. And I received some requests for more Shrinkadink projects. So here we go. I'm going to tape the card to the Shrinkadinks, and you want to make sure that the top of the card where you're going to be punching your hole for the ornament is at the top. Use a tape like masking or painter's tape that will release easily when we're done. We're going to flip it over, and once again, I'm so sorry about the lights above. I haven't graduated to the point where I have a TV screen hooked up to my camera and can see what a viewer would see as I'm recording. So my apologies. I will get there one day and I'll get that equipment. I appreciate you bearing with me on that. This project is a lot of fun. I used my paint markers to color in the image using, of course, the card as a guide. I removed the card. I'm going to fussy cut out the snowman, and then I'll punch a hole in the top of the Santa's hat to use it as an ornament later. If you're unfamiliar with Shrinkadinks, it does just that. It shrinks whatever you put on that very thin paper down to a quarter of the size. All of the size that it loses, it builds up in girth. So after about a 1 to 3 minute stay in the oven, it comes out a more substantial piece. You want to make sure you punch that hole before you stick it into the oven, otherwise it may just absolutely close up when it shrinks. I'm going to go back to the original card that started it all and fussy cut the snowman out of it. I'm going to back it up against a darker neutral shade of paper. Just like this. Make the Shrinkadink piece an ornament by adding a piece of baker's twine. I like the black and white for this one. That nose was very sharp, so I trimmed a piece of it off and now I'll give it a quick sanding. I don't want my gift recipient to get snagged on that. Said recipient loves snowmen, and she also likes to have a new piece to display on her desk at work every year at Christmas. She also appreciates simplicity, so this will be the perfect addition for her workspace this holiday season. I repeated the process for this other snowman card, and this one turned out so adorable even with all of its detail. I thought that this would be a cute way to accessorize a simple greeting card. What do you think? Perfect for the folks that you may not necessarily give a gift to, but want to give them a greeting card wishing them a warm holiday. What a cute surprise. They can then take this and hang it on their Christmas tree, rear view mirror, keychain, or a charm on their handbag. I mistakenly chopped off the Y in the word joy, so I hope that doesn't mean it's only going to be a partially joyful holiday. We'll see. Hopefully Mr. Snowman doesn't hold it against me. When using Shrinkadinks, the possibilities are truly endless, and I hope that you can see the potential and want to craft with it yourself. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Share it with a friend. Subscribe if you haven't. What do you have to lose? If you want to see more content from this channel, check out one of these videos next. And until next time, my friend, don't forget to craft what you love.